Good evening. I'm going to call this May 14th meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission to order. Welcome visitors, staff, anyone online, and fellow commissioners. Allison, can we take a roll call?
Okay, Commissioner Bryant.
Yes.
Commissioner Summer.
Here.
Vice Chair Mitchner.
Here.
Chair Davis.
Here.
And Commissioner Felios is absent.
Absent. All right, next on the agenda are the approval of the minutes. Are there any commission comments? Edits? Are there any members of the public that wish to address the minutes for the April meeting?
No one online.
All right. With that, I would see if there's any further commission discussion or entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Vote please.
Okay, we have Commissioner Bryant.
Yes.
Commissioner Summer.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mitchner.
Yes.
And Chair Davis.
Yes. So that's approved unanimously. All right, next on the agenda are oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter that's not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and state law prohibits the commission from acting on non-agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to address a topic that's not on the agenda? Seeing no one here, anyone online?
We have Bruce England.
Mr. England?
Hi all, Bruce England, Wisdom Station Drive, member of Green Spaces Mountain View. Ronita, I like your lapel sunflower. I wanted to lead with that. And the two things I wanted to mention, one is I brought this up with some people, including the person who handles your IT infrastructure, that the audio was not terrific at your last meeting. So far tonight sounds good. So maybe some improvements have been made. I know it's a kind of unusual environment for city meetings, but just letting you know that that was a problem at the last meeting. And lastly, at last night's city council meeting, when they discussed the capital improvement program or CIP, green infrastructure was brought up a lot, and the biodiversity strategy and urban forest plan came up several times too in the context of that. So we tend to think of public works and CIP projects, but as you know, there are projects in there that have overlap with what PRC talks about. So I wanted to mention that to you. And if you're interested, you might check out the audio or video of that meeting once it's available. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. England, and thanks to the IT AV staff for the improvements. Mr. England or anyone online, if we are not audible, please let us know. I know my voice tends to trail off sometimes, so I'll try to project. But thank you for that. Next on the agenda, item 5.1, which is a heritage tree removal application appeal for 2420 Villa Nueva Way. So we will start with a staff report.
Thank you, Commissioners. Russell Hanson, Urban Forest Manager for Community Services, here to present on behalf of staff. You know, in general, address 2420 Villanueva Way, excuse me. As you can see kind of from the overview shot here, the tree is located at the very rear of the property, almost adjacent to basically 3 properties is what the canopy overhangs. So that's what we're here for today. Sorry, next slide. There we go. So again, the tree in question is one Sequoia sempervirens, little typo there, sorry about that. 30-inch diameter. Overall, our feeling was it had good health, good structure. You can see in the one photograph, there's been some trimming for PG&E lines. We'll talk about that in just a second. In terms of the applicant and the application itself, the 3 criteria that were listed was that the tree does not have proper growth space. The tree is growing in close proximity to structures and causing damage, or will do so in the near future. And then lastly, their arborist report also stated it's just a matter of time before removal is necessary and it will become more difficult, future task and delay getting a replant started. So those were the primary concerns that we were looking at when we evaluated the tree. Again, preliminary findings, you look at the photograph on the left here, overall canopy health is good. Foliage size, shoot elongation, et cetera, is all within the expected range for this species. So it's not triggering anything that we're concerned about. But as you can see on the photograph on the right again, PG&E has had to come in and do some clearance for the electrical line. So there is probably about 20 to 25% of the canopy on that lower stem that has been removed to create that window for the PG&E utilities. While less than ideal, our feeling was, our opinion, our belief is that while that is not ideal, it does not really create any kind of structural defect or present any challenges to manage beyond keeping clear of the lines at this time. Next photographs we'll share with you this evening. On the left there, you can see the tree itself is actually already in contact with a redwood fence at the rear of the property. So at the very base of the tree, it's kind of in contact with that fence. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side, this is actually at the neighboring property on the backside. As we look towards the tree, you can see kind of behind the deciduous tree in the foreground there's a little like shed. That is basically their pool equipment and so forth in that back corner of the property. And we'll kind of get you a little bit up close vision of that here next. This is on the back side of that shed, basically, that you can see the fence on the left-hand side. There's a quasi retaining wall that was constructed right there between the fence and the concrete pad. It actually has two segments. You can see the one large one sticking up and then the other one that's just barely going out of view there, that's a little bit shorter. My understanding from looking at the photos and everything, because I did not see that exposed, that runs about another 6 to 8 inches at least down below grade. So that's kind of what that wall presents. And then the photograph on the right is, again, just a little bit at different angles so that you can see, approximately 12 inches or so between that pad and the fence. Might be a little bit more narrow than that, but that's the ballpark what we're looking at. The next slides here, concrete pad. They had talked about it damaging the pool equipment. We absolutely, on that photograph on the left, you can see the crack kind of right by the gentleman's footprint there. But ultimately, we felt that was more just a settlement issue over time as to why that concrete pad had cracked. And then on the photograph on the right, they actually, at our request, had done some additional excavations to kind of expose that edge of the pad and to see what kind of root activity was going under there. You can see basically they identified one large 4 to 6 inch, maybe max, tree root that's down about 24 inches below that pad. So again, our feeling was roots weren't probably that likely cause of any damage to that concrete pad or otherwise. So ultimately, our findings was that, its overall health and structure is good, and there was no evidence or news of any nuisance, damage, or interference issues, that could not be addressed through corrective measures, either root pruning or canopy pruning. And then above and beyond that, there were no improvements to be constructed that were submitted. We found that the tree structure and canopy overall was good, short of that PG&E conflict. And that bottom line, it did not need to be removed for good forestry practices, that we felt there were alternatives to potentially redesigning that fence and creating a little bit of a cutout to give it another 10 or 15 years where it could potentially grow without actually doing too much damage. That's all that I had for you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. I neglected to introduce the attorneys here. It's on my crib sheet and I overlooked it. So Assistant City Attorney Diana Faisley will be representing staff. Thank you. And Senior Assistant City Attorney Dave Wilgus will be representing the Urban Forest Board. Thank you. I didn't know I was represented. I'm glad. So thank you for being here. So just how this will work, the appellant will have 10 minutes to present anything the appellant wishes to say. The applicant will also have 10 minutes to speak. The commission will then have an opportunity to ask questions of any of the speakers, staff, appellant, applicant. And then we'll open it up to public comment. And after that, the staff will have an additional 2 minutes. Applicant and appellant will each have 2 minutes, and then the commission will deliberate. So with that, we will ask the appellant. Please, you have the floor, and if you step to the podium. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Marquez. I live at 2420 Villanueva Way, and aforementioned redwood tree is in my property. For this time, I would like to divide my talk. I would just give you a little description of this tree and rationale behind why I filed this application. I would also next cite city ordinance regarding my application, and I would close with a few remarks. So this redwood tree is, as staff has pointed out, is at my backyard. It is at the intersection of two of my neighbor's property, adjacent to my property, 240 Chatham Way and 280 Chatham Way. The fencing it's actually at the T intersection of these two other properties. It's literally right there. And it also is growing, as you can see, underneath the secondary power lines. Over the past few years, the different sections of the fence have been needing to be replaced. One for 280 Chatham Way, the shared fence between 280 Chatham Way and my area, and 240 Chatham Way and my area. And I noticed that the fraying occurred very close to the base of the tree, where it hits the fence. I gave no thought to that. I thought the fence is an aging structure. It needed to be replaced anyway. I gave no thought to that, and we replaced it without incident. A few years after that, at around 3 a.m., I noticed crackling at my backyard. Apparently, the one of the secondary power lines had snapped. It was winter. Forget the month, around January maybe. It was windy. It was winter. It necessitated a 911 call. The firemen came, PG&E came, fixed it. Again, I gave no thought of that. I thought, winter, these things happen. It's an accident. And then finally, my neighbor at 240 Chatham Way, Mr. Landa is here. He's an appellant also and will talk as well. Pointed me to the damage being done at the concrete slab, providing a surface for his pool equipment and pump. So it was at that point I realized these three incidents have one common denominator. It is the area and the area situated with this redwood tree in question. So it was then that I did my due diligence and approached a couple of tree trimming companies I've dealt with and the aforementioned arborist. I tried to find solutions, but the recommendation was that the damage has already been done. The tree continues to grow. The tree is at an undesirable location. The damage will continue, and this was the only alternative I have. So then I filed my application, and now I would like to segue into city ordinance, which covers my application. The city ordinance says Article 1, in accordance with Mountain View City Code Article 2, sections 32 to 35, citing these factors: damage, proximity to existing structures, and interference with utility services. I will address each of those separately. Damage, as I've already mentioned, has already been damaged to fencing between 240 and 280 Chatham Way, our shared fencing. There will continue to be damage as the tree continues to grow. It's a very large tree. I used to be able to play hide and seek and hide behind the tree. Now, as you can see, the tree hits the fence already. And then there's also damage, as was presented in the report, to the concrete slab for the pool and pump equipment being housed at 240 Chatham Way. Mr. Landa will has already presented additional pictures showing roots growing from my property to his property. I have consulted informally with my tree trimming companies regarding how much all this will cost. They said they don't know. The cost to do initial investigation is probably 4,000 per day. And we don't know how much the roots have invaded this property. So it will probably take about half a week at least to just to do the initial investigation and to figure out how much roots have to be cut. Which leads me to my second point. By cutting these roots, I'm afraid of what that will do to the stability of this tree. As I already mentioned, the cables have snapped once. If we destabilize the tree by cutting the roots, I'm afraid that the tree might, even with a small lean, might damage the electricity lines further, or a small lean on the other side will definitely damage the fence. So with all these points, damage to existing property, proximity to existing structures at my neighbor at 240 Chatham Way, and interference with utility lines, I submit that the conditions for the tree removal as specified in the ordinance I just mentioned have been met. I come to you today and this is not a request I take lightly. I moved to Mountain View precisely because I love the vegetation in the neighborhood at Waverly Park. So in an ideal world, I will not be here. In an ideal world, if I had all the money, I would have all the property beside me and I would keep all these trees. But that's not possible. So I would like to request the board to please reconsider the denial of my application and consider my appeal to remove this tree. I intend to fully abide by the requirement to replace this tree with additional trees. I believe it's 2. If you'd like, we can also plant trees at a park. I'm open to that. And I hope with these replacements will somehow approximate what will be missed with a canopy, which this redwood tree has brought. And I have to balance my own enjoyment, my desire to have all these trees with safety and enjoyment and property ownership issues with my neighbors as well. So I would like to request the board to please approve my application and please reconsider the denial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Now we'll give the, so you're the applicant.
Yes.
And Mr. Landa is the appellant, and Landa, you have 10 minutes.
I'm Felipe Landa. I live on 240 Chatham Way, and I'm the guy with the pool and the problem. Well, he has a problem too, but this is a $15,000 problem. The issue is not that the tree there's something wrong with the tree. That's actually, it's the opposite. It's because the tree is healthy, it's growing. It's gonna double its size. I walk to Cooper Park and see more mature redwood trees, and they have a 220-inch circumference. These things are huge. Mr. Marcus already said that this tree is at the intersection of 3 properties. So moving the fence, think about it. Who's going to give up their property line to make room for a tree that should never have been planted there? The Mountain View tree guidelines say, don't do this. Well, somebody 40 years ago or 35 years ago did it. And you say, don't do this because it's going to cause a problem in the future. Well, the future is now, and it's a nuisance tree. It's causing me aggravation. I had to tear it all up just to show you that there's a root, and the root is pushing everything up. It's an elevation, it's a crack. I provided many, many pictures, including one that shows the level change that this has caused on the pool slab that obviously now has cracked, and it's coming up against the pool equipment, the piping. A pool equipment company says, this is only going to get worse. They've seen it before. It's very expensive, and cutting the roots is not going to solve the problem because it's going to come back. 4 independent arborists have given the same recommendation. Now, what's the point of hiring a professional if the city is going to ignore what the professional says? We submitted a report. The other 3 just came and gave their assessment verbally, but one report was submitted at great expense to Mr. Marcus. Says there's no solution here. This is a good tree in the wrong place. This should be at Cooper Park, should be in a mountain. I think the solution, because I need to figure out how I'm going to fix this. Just saying, oh, you know, tear it all up and put a new concrete slab and level everything until when? Until, you know, 5-10 years. I plan to be here a while in Mountain View. And besides, what is that doing to my property value? If I decide to sell my house tomorrow, this is going to be an issue and I have to disclose it. This is a nuisance. It's causing me aggravation. And, you know, I think as a property owner, as a taxpayer, I have a right to work with Mr. Marcus. My argument is not with Mr. Marcus. We're on the same page. And again, I think that the right thing to do is to remove this tree so that I can get on with my repairs, which I am not looking forward to doing, but I want to stop the damage now. And remove this tree and go plant another 1-2 more trees where they belong. That's what whoever planted this tree shouldn't have planted this tree there, as I said. So I would really, really, really like you to reconsider the denial, because the tree is great. I mean, I'm not saying that it's ugly and I don't like it and we should remove it for that reason. This is causing monetary pain, property damage. Your tree guidelines say, you know, okay, is it affecting the structure? No, these are the reasons why you approve the removal of a heritage tree. But do you account for the impact on personal property? You don't. That needs to come from, you know, showing that it's actually happening. I'm afraid that if I just indiscriminately get down there with an excavator and cut all the roots, that, like Mr. Marcus, it's going to bring in its instability to the tree, but it's going to make it unstable. You have in your guideline that if it's unstable and you specify how far away structures need to be from the trunk of the tree and the drip line and the canopy, all those things are violated. This tree violates all those things. And if I go, you deny the appeal, and I go and cut all the roots, and I'm gonna go to town because I need to ensure that at least for the time that I think I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna sell my house, that this is not gonna come back. And then what's that gonna do to the stability and the health of the tree? I'm concerned about that too, but if it's denied, I need to solve my problem no matter what. So please reconsider. It's already gonna cost me $15,000. And I don't wanna do it again later. Again, the arborists have told me, you know, whatever you do, it's gonna come back. The roots, and I tell you why the roots like it there, because there's pool equipment, there's a French drain there, there's you know, watering that has to happen to clean the filtering and equipment. Yeah, there's water there. And then, you know, there's been a drought and I realize we're not there anymore, but they still like the water that is there. It's nutrient rich. So I don't want to continue feeding that problem just because I need to do maintenance on my equipment and my pool. So please reconsider that decision. It is a nuisance. I know there's legal precedents about this. And I really, really want you to do the right thing. I'll go, you know, plant another tree somewhere. But not here. This is not where these trees belong. We don't have 30 acres, 10 acres to plant these trees. We have our little piece of mountain that we want to keep, we want to preserve, and we want to keep good relationships with our neighbors too. You know, and that I think is pretty special, the fact that we're both on the same page regarding this. Okay, so thank you for your time. Russell, nice to meet you. And again, thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Now the commission will have the opportunity to ask questions of any of the presenters. Commissioner Mitchell, would you like to begin?
Yeah, just a couple questions. First for staff. So you've mentioned before that, you know, that some trees are better candidates than others for root rooting mitigations. Where does a redwood fall in that spectrum? And if the roots were contributing to the concrete pad cracking at 240 Chatham, you know, are the roots in that vicinity, now that you've seen the dig out, ones that could be pruned, and could that be done without impacting the stability of the tree?
Sure. So to answer your first question in terms of where redwoods fall kind of in the scale, they definitely are one of our more water requiring trees. So as a result, root pruning will have a bigger effect on a redwood tree in general. So that's where I go in terms of the generality. In terms of the concrete pad, et cetera, you know, the concern staff has is that we absolutely understand. We saw all the photographs my staff saw, visited the site when some of it was exposed, et cetera. It just ultimately, we felt like the pad for the equipment itself, when the property owner or the appellant were talking about them being at different levels. We absolutely agree that they are at different levels, but ultimately we aren't able to determine if they were poured at the same level at the same time. Personal belief, it was likely that pad was poured slightly higher because that allows the water to run off. It doesn't pool into the pad. They don't want those pads typically at grade level. So that's kind of where we went, is that the limited amount of roots that we saw, the one large one, there were some smaller feeder roots, smaller than a finger, say, that were in that area, but they were all very, very limited. And so without much more excavation, finding a lot more roots, we just don't believe that the amount of root pruning required is going to have, I'll say, significant impact on the structure or the health at this time. We could be wrong. If that excavation were to occur, to dig that out and put a root barrier or otherwise to do the repairs for the pool equipment, we might have more information to where we see a lot more roots. But right now, we just don't see them underneath that pad. Again, that was almost a 24-inch excavation that was a good 3, 4, 5 feet along that concrete pad. And there wasn't a lot of root activity. So that's just ultimately where we felt roots were a manageable issue.
Can I add something?
You'll have an opportunity later to make additional comments.
So another question, you mentioned that the fence could be altered as a possible future mitigation. Can you describe or sort of point out in the photo how you think that might be done?
Sure, it would be difficult in this situation, but ultimately, as simple as you could perhaps where the two closest posts are that are existing, you could offset that as little as about 6 inches towards that, the extra piece of kind of foundation or retaining wall, not to the pad itself, but that wall, you could extend it out to that, and that would likely buy you another 5 to 10 years. Perhaps, I'm gonna say if it's an 8-foot section, probably $400 to $500, I'll say, in cost, maybe as much as $800 to make that repair.
I'm just curious. So the applicant's here. The appellant from 240 is here. Is there an opinion from 280 on this side? I mean, they're not here. I don't know how they feel. No. Do you
No,
know?
but most of the damage is on my property.
Okay.
If you think of it as a T.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just wondering, are they gonna be bummed that the tree's gone? Or are they gonna be happy that the tree's gone? You don't know, or, I mean, it would be hearsay.
You know, based on the fact that I've known him 21 years, I think he won't care. That's just.
Can I just answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think he will care when I approach him and say we have to fix the fence again after we already fixed it. Because the tree is going to grow. And I don't think anyone wants to be bothered fixing the tree every couple of years. Because the tree keeps on growing. Right, that's my opinion.
And one other question, and maybe this is more on your experience. So the tree is, I can't remember the circumference of this one. At the,
About 30 inches.
is that what it, that's what it was at the, or no, wait, I know that, I have it written down.
Did you say circumference or diameter? Sorry.
The
'cause I said
circumference was
diameter.
100 or 123, or I mean, it was 100 by one report and 123 by the arborist report. So in subsequent years, it's probably not gonna grow as fast as it's grown in the, I mean. How long? You can define this question however you want, but I mean, when will it be 150? Or how, I mean,
How fast the growth? I understand. I
it
think.
depends on wet seasons and dry seasons and stuff.
And that's ultimately where I go with it. It really is going to be heavily dependent upon kind of the growing that it being. The water, the resources, you know, all of that are going to be heavily dependent, but I'll say on average. The redwood will grow probably a half to 3/4 of 1 inch per year. So if you were to give it 6 inches of growth, you're giving it probably 6 to 8 years of additional life perhaps.
All right, that's. what I got for now.
Commissioner Silver.
Yes, I have a question for the appellant. I'm wondering if you know, sir, when the pool and pool equipment was built?
I do not. I've been there 21 years and the pool was already there,
Do you have the sense that it's older than the tree or younger than the tree?
Younger.
Okay.
Yes,
So
You
the
know.
tree was likely there when that was all built, but
That's-
it was probably
Can I just
a
say
lot
something?
smaller.
I've been at my property since 2001, so it's 24 years. It's already there. And there were other neighbors before Felipe.
The
So
pool was already there?
I believe so.
Okay,
And I don't know when the tree was planted. But what I could say is I was already there 24 years ago and the tree was already.
thank you. That's all I had.
I think the appeal mentions multiple arborist reports. I think what we saw was one arborist report. Is that correct?
That's
correct.
the only one, I only have one written.
Multiple arborists gave their opinion and one produced a report because it cost $600.
It cost $600 for one report.
So we weren't gonna get 4.
Did-
We
did-
thought we only needed 1.
Did Mr. Morneau actually go to the pool side?
I
Because
don't,
the write-up essentially is saying the appellant said,
yes,
I understand.
right.
It doesn't sound like he,
He wasn't there. The tree company, which I worked with, we went there
okay,
and talked to Mr. Landa and we took photos. And then those are the same photos I discussed with the arborist and he did further investigation on my end, on my side.
some other arborists, but not, doesn't look like Mr. Morneau actually went to the site. The fence is on the property line?
Yes. On both, all 3 of our.
And how close is the pool equipment pad to the property line?
Actually, that was gonna be my comment to Russell. When you saw that picture that had the, so
There's a level,
there's a like a 10-year difference between the development of the Chatham Way side and the Villanueva side. And the properties are offset in elevation, maybe a couple feet. And when the development was first done in the 60s, 1965, the fencing was, the property lines were delimited by those retaining walls, those concrete slabs, vertical concrete slabs that you see, or the retaining wall, and their spacing, so they may be six foot long, and their spacing where there used to be a post. So the fencing used to be like the basis for the fence in the property, between the property line. And then over time, the posts rotted and the fences were built on in this case, on Mr. Marcus's side of that retaining. So the root actually pushed that last retaining wall at the corner of our three properties. And that's why it's so askew and elevated. But it's right on the property. You could say retaining walls define the property.
So the retaining wall, not
Yes.
the fence defines the property.
Yes.
And so the distance from that wall to
To the pool equipment, I would say is to the slab is like a foot, maybe less than 2 feet.
and city code calls for a setback of more than that, 3 feet, I believe, for equipment from a property line. Just a point of consideration. Mr. Hanson, you had a view of the tree that had sort of carved out for the power lines. I went to the site, but could only view it from the street. I couldn't see it.
Sure.
And I didn't recognize that view. Can you tell me what orientation that's from?
That is standing on the back side of the tree.
So that's not, you would agree that's not what I saw from the street?
Correct, absolutely. That if you looked at it from the Villanueva side, you would not see that. This is actually offset at kind of the edge of one of the adjacent properties looking at it sideways.
I think my other questions have already been asked. So, please.
So just. It's hard sometimes when we can't see all those things. So I did like a Google Earth thing. And so the pool seems to be on the other side of the yard, or at least it starts on the other side of the yard. And it comes-
Actually, the first photo that Russell showed,
Yeah.
the overhead,
Yeah.
you can see the pool on the left side corner. So if you were,
Right, so the pool's on the opposite side of the
yes,
street. I mean,
yes.
I'm not gonna tell you where to put a pad, but I mean, could the pad be located slightly, could it be moved a few feet or something? I don't know the design of the backyard and I don't wanna, I'm just asking.
It's a lack of space. There's already on one side, it's already built out with travertine and there's a hot tub. So that's and then there's not enough room where that deciduous tree is actually an apple tree. There's not enough room to actually, it would block the access to the side yard. So I believe me, I've thought of all kinds of mitigation ideas.
All right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, now we'll see if there are any public comments. Is there anyone from the public, not the appellant or the applicant or staff, that wishes to address this matter?
I have one online, who's England.
I'm sorry, Mr. England? Mr. England, please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening again, all. Bruce England. I'm on Wisman Station Drive. This is always difficult. I know it is for the commissioners too, because we are talking to property owners who are our neighbors. And of course, what we should be doing is talking about the biodiversity strategy and urban forest plan and making sure that it's clear that current ideas about tree removal allowance are brought up to date. And that work is being done, but we are where we are today. And many members of the community, the homeowners who are attending tonight might not be aware of this, but there are a number of members of the community who are very alarmed at the rate of tree removal that we're seeing in Mountain View. And that we need to be very careful about tree removal allowances. In this case, with this tree and listening to what's been said, the property owners have had these properties since 2001 and 2003. respectively. And so the tree was there before. So they should have anticipated what they would have had to deal with the tree when they bought their properties. I mean, that's just a reality. And now on the shot of the tree where it shows where branches have been removed, of course, this is mentioned a lot at PRC meetings when there are hearings about tree removal, where it sort of almost looks like it was butchered, that people were not careful about the branch removal. And I think it was at your last meeting where you asked the city arborist, I think, about which branches need to be removed in order to, have proper clearance for the utility lines. And you were told that some of those lines are high power, high voltage, and others aren't, and that they don't have to clear the branches away from all of those lines. And yet in that photo, it looks like it was cleared around all those lines, if I understood that correctly. The arborist statement about this is going to have to be removed eventually, that seems like a leap in faith to me, because if the tree is left to live its normal natural life, it won't need to be removed. So, but that line of logic is not included in there. And then lastly, again, if you look at Google's satellite photos of the property, you see there's a beautiful line of trees going all the way out to Grant Road and over to Cooper Park, and then another line of trees all along the edge of Cooper Park over there. So there's a network of trees. Trees do function together, and wildlife and pollinators depend on this vegetation being there. So those are various points I want to make. I say these things reluctantly because I want to honor our neighbors' wishes, but I just think this tree needs to remain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. England. Are there any other
No.
individuals wishing to speak? All right, now we'll turn to additional comments. So staff will have additional comment, 2 minutes. The applicant will have 2 minutes, and then the appellant will have 2 minutes before the commission deliberates. So, Mr. Hanson, any other comments that you wish to make at this time?
I'll just keep it short. You know, we absolutely appreciate that this truly is kind of a wrong tree for the location. It should not have been planted there originally. It could have been adjusted or otherwise. But the fact is, it's been there and it's thrived for, 50, 60 plus years at this point, based off of what we believe on the size of the tree. Above and beyond that, the conflicts that it has, we feel are still manageable, that they will be manageable for a period of at least 5, probably 10 or more years, before it becomes too problematic. In terms of PG&E, it complies with the clearance that they have to achieve by CPUC order. So it's not something that they're pushing or they feel that it presents a significant hazard to their electrical lines. And so ultimately, we felt like the other statement, if not removing it now, later on, or it prevents replant. There's nothing saying that we can't get some replants started now. Even if we don't remove this tree, we could ultimately plant some new trees in a location, allow those to grow up and start providing some canopy while this tree starts to kind of reach that senescence, that point where we got to take it down because it just creates too much conflict perhaps. But we don't see that for the next 5 to 10 years at a minimum. So we felt like that it should be preserved at this time.
Thank you. So now we'll go to Mr. Marquez for any additional comments you'd like to make.
I just want to make a 2 minute. Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the comments and I appreciate your inviting me here. I agree with most of the comments. The tree is very beautiful, but it's a beautiful tree at the wrong place. And I wish I would not be coming back here 5, 8 years from now when I don't have a job and too old to deal with the eventual removal of the tree. I don't think anyone's disputing that because of the undesirable location. And I just want to say that I'm very open to replacing the tree, whether at my property or at some other area, so that by the time they grow, it can be a approximate replacement for the current canopy, which I'm applying to remove for. So that's all, and I would like to appeal to the board to please approve my application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Mr. Landa? Okay, 2 additional minutes to make
Okay,
comments.
thanks. Okay, so I also appreciate all your input, comments. Also, if it's gonna be a problem in 5 to 10 years, we're gonna be here again, 5 to 10 years. I mean, why don't we solve the problem now? I appreciate what you said, Mr. England. But you know what? Who thinks about those things? That tree is gonna be a problem. I'm not gonna buy this amazing house. You know, you're gonna do it, right? But now if I do it, I have to say, hey, you know, if I sell it, you got, you know, a ton of repair work and a lot of costs that you're gonna have to deal with. Nobody disclosed anything to me. Is that the seller's problem when I bought the house? Hey, this is gonna be a problem in 20 years, so you better, just so you know, take it into consideration if you wanna buy this house. So that, people don't do that, I don't think. Right? So it's like I bought the problem. Is that what it sounds like? Come on, I'm a resident of Mountain View for many years. And again, if it's gonna be a problem, this tree is gonna grow. It's gonna continue to grow. All right, and then we can't give it enough space for it to grow properly. We're gonna have to come back and do this all over again. If not in 5 years, in 10, okay, but it's still gonna happen. So let's plant new trees. Yes, we can always plant new trees regardless of this, but what I'm saying is that 1 for 1, at least to maintain things consistent. So please also consider the fact that, again, I want to state that it's a nuisance. So I have a right to do something about this. And it's got to be clear that it has nothing to do with how beautiful the tree is. It's the fact that I am being impacted by it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Landa. Now, the commission will deliberate and potentially make a motion. So, would you like to begin?
Oh goodness,
Chair
you're gonna
Sullivan?
make me start. Well, first start off saying that I recognize how difficult this situation is and how frustrating it is for the two neighbors. And I do have empathy for your situation. I think what this really comes down to is people are going about their lives and they aren't really thinking too much about that living thing in their yard. And then one day they realize that it's gotten enormous. And that's become a problem for them. When I read the city's ordinance, the protection of the urban forest, and I did some highlighting, the section that really stand out to me says an emphasis on the intent to preserve heritage trees. So I do see that staff has identified there are options that they're going to take some thought and they're going to take some expense, but it would allow for the continuance of this living thing in the backyard here. And it seems to me that that we should give those options a chance. And with recognizing that, there will be sort of a form of compromise here. One thing, it's common for fences not to be on the property line. It sounds like the fence in this case is actually on the Villanueva side. And the tree sways in the wind, the tree moves, it's a living thing. That is essentially, it's coming up against a fixed item, which is the fence and the concrete slab, which was put there when the tree existed, but it was a lot smaller. It was probably half the size based on your guess of growth of 1 inch a year. I assume you meant diameter.
Yes,
unit
correct.
Diameter. So it would have been, half the size that it was when the pool equipment was built, and maybe the people that built that didn't really have an appreciation for exactly how big a redwood tree gets. But I guess that to sum up all this rambling, I think I'm leaning towards staff's recommendation, which is to deny the appeal. But I do want to hear the thoughts of the other commissioners and how you're resolving it yourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Slimmer.
Yes, so interestingly, in my house, we have exactly the same situation in that there's 3 properties meeting. And one of the neighbor's little girl came home with the sapling of a redwood tree, which schools used to do probably 40 years ago. And where do you plant it? In the corner. It's a huge tree at this point. I mean, it's lovely. You see it from everywhere in the neighborhood. One of those cement plates is already not at the angle one would expect, and the fence doesn't look all that good, but it's a truly beautiful tree. And of course, one day it may need to go. At this point, it's a beautiful tree, and realtors have told me that having a tree like, it's not my tree, it's my neighbor's tree, but it raises the price of your property because it attracts people. There is a beauty in it. There's birds in it. I sit outdoors and listen to the birds singing. So my feeling is that staff has looked at the tree, looked at our ordinance. There isn't like an immediate problem. There may be a problem in the future. At this point, there is no problem that cannot be dealt with. And things are not perfect. Our driveways crack, our floors crack. The 2 sides of my house are not the same height. We have an obligation to do what we can to preserve the canopy and protect the heritage trees we have. And I don't see sufficient reason for not accepting staff's decision. We need to plant way more trees. We're not doing well enough on that. But what we have currently, we need to protect. So I am going to be supporting staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Bryan. Commissioner Ritter.
So, I'm gonna start by saying, these heritage tree decisions are really tough. And it's even more difficult when the tree's in the property owner's backyard and we can't directly view the sort of the situation on the ground with cracks and damages. And so therefore, we need to rely on photos and statements by people. And, maybe as we consider future heritage tree ordinances, maybe there's a way to be able to get limited access to get closer views of things. This is a mature redwood that's in good health. It's lush, fairly well balanced. With as Commissioner Davis said, I didn't notice from a distance. You didn't notice the pruning, at least from the different angles that I looked at it. It's actually really a gorgeous tree, and I think it's visually significant in the neighborhood, which is another element of the heritage tree ordinance. The city code, specifies that a single removal criterion is just a minimum, and that additional criteria shall be considered in rendering a decision with the emphasis on preserving heritage trees. And Commissioner Summer actually made me think of something, that preserve doesn't necessarily mean forever. It means, well, at least I'd have to look it up in the dictionary, but I mean, preserve means sort of continue it. you know, after, you know, reading the materials and spending time at the site, and, you know, I looked from Chatham, I looked from Villanueva. You know, I spent probably half an hour out there, sort of looking at as much as I could see. You know, the only criteria that I could find that, you know, it's partially satisfied is number one, both with the proximity to the structures and interference with utility services. As it relates to the utility wires, you know, it sounds like PG&E does regular clearing. PG&E has pruning has caused maybe a bit of structural asymmetry, but not enough to where the tree doesn't appear healthy or out of balance. As it relates to the proximity to the structures, I tend to agree that at least in the short term, mitigation is possible. I think the trees been growing next to the fence for a long time. At this point, the damage to the fence is listed as a future possibility. And if and when the tree begins to push up against or impact the structure of the fence, it seems like, you know, modification of the fence might be possible. With regard to the cracks in the concrete at 240 Chatham, you know, it's staff's opinion that the roots may be the cause. I think that there's a good chance that it is, but that root pruning is a potential mitigation. PRC sort of has to rely on the statements of city staff and the applicant and the appellant, as well as, you know, some photos that sometimes are not super clear and maybe not all the ones that we might like to see. I think it's helpful to know that one root found running under the pad is actually 24 inches below the concrete pad, which seems significantly far below the structure. So I think that the cracking, even if it's sort of directly related to the tree's roots, has to be, you know, weighed against the removal of a mature and attractive tree. And since PRC is directed to emphasize the preservation of trees, I'm always listening for potential mitigations. And it appears that root pruning might be an option in this case. You know, I think this is an interesting one too, that I think the appellant has a stronger case than the applicant, which is interesting, but it's probably also the case that the appellant can't make the original application because the tree isn't in the in his yard. So it's a bizarre one that way. So anyway, with regard to the removal criteria, I don't see any conforming use issues. The tree is in good health. It's not near the end of its cycle. And so because the removal criteria are not sufficiently satisfied and because mitigation options exist, I lean towards denying the appeal and upholding the staff decision to deny removal of this tree. However, you know, I can definitely, similar to Commissioner Summer, I see arguments for the other side, particularly as it relates to the potential damage to the pool equipment. And so I want to continue to listen to what commissioners have to say. But my first take would be to deny the appeal.
Well, there's only one commissioner left to speak, and that's me. And I generally concur with everything you said. And these are difficult, very difficult things to adjudicate. I think one could argue the tree's in the wrong place. You could also argue the pad's in the wrong place. And these things become apparent over time. Unfortunately, they're not determined when they should be. But I too will accept the staff determination that the conflicts are manageable. I don't think this tree will ever have to go personally. I think it is a magnificent tree and there are inconvenient truths, but I think the issues can be managed. As you said, a 4-inch root, 24 inches below. I'm not, in my own opinion, certain that that's going to continue to be, or it'll take a long time for that to create significant damage. And to be consistent, well, to take the ordinance as it is written and with specific emphasis on redwood trees. And to be consistent with our prior rulings, I too will support the staff recommendation. So. Any other
Something
comments?
to add.
Yeah.
If we, I just wanted to note that if we determine to adopt the proposed resolution, that there are 2 typos that I wanted to point out.
So you better make the correct motion.
Right, so, and after where it says resolved, item 1, it refers to Mountain View City Code section 3225, but it should be 35, and then that happens again in item 3. The other places it actually references 35, so those two corrections would need to be made, I suppose, as a part of the motion.
Just catch up.
1 and 3. Yes, I know I'm a nerd, but spelling, that type of stuff pops out at me. So it's easier. In the resolution.
Separate attachment.
It's one of the attachments, it's attachment 1.
Oh, okay. We need to correct the reference to.
Yeah, that would, you could just say that correct both references to 3225 to read 3235. Well, so if we're ready for that, I move that we, oh, now I lost that.
I have-
Adopt,
Oh, can you read that?
oh, you need to make it
Not
bigger.
really.
Yes, that's the staff recommendation to adopt a resolution of the Urban Forestry Board of the City of Mountain View to deny the appeal, uphold staff's decision, and deny the removal of 1 heritage tree at 2420 Villanueva Way, to be read in title only, further reading waived. The resolution as attachment 1 should be corrected to reflect the city code, section 3235. In all instances,
In
yeah.
Paragraphs 1 and 3.
In paragraphs 1 and 3.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Yep, you good, Allison, on the,
Oh, yeah. Do you still want it up? Sorry.
no, I think we're good.
Sorry.
I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay, perfect. So Commissioner Bryant?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer,
I will apologetically vote yes.
Vice Chair Mitchner?
Yes.
And Chair Davis.
Yes. It's a reservation. All right. Thank you, for those joining us on item 5.1. We'll now turn to item 5.2. The heritage tree removal application appeal for 500 West Middlefield Road. And again, we will begin with the staff report, and then I think we only have an appellant. Or the applicant, and the appellant are the same. Is that correct? So we'll have 2 minutes or 10 minutes for the applicant. And then we'll have public comment. I'm sorry, the commission will ask questions and then I'll have public comment. So, Mr. Hanson?
All right, thank you, commissioners. Again, we're here for 500 West Middlefield in this situation. It's basically a large HOA complex along Middlefield Road. The trees in question, the application itself, let me start off by saying the application itself originally had 3 trees included in the application. Staff did agree that the middle of those 3 trees is one that qualified because of overcrowding because of some other structural issues, we decided to approve that one. The other two trees, which we will refer to as trees numbered 1 and 3 today, ultimately were denied for removal. Those two trees are 2 eucalyptus cytoroxylin red ironbark eucalyptus. The larger one, which is, I'll say, the westernmost tree to the left in our photograph, is 27 inches in diameter, and the one to the far right, well, not far right, but middle right, I guess, would be about 17 inches. Both of them we felt were in fair health and had fair structure, despite prior heading cuts or otherwise. The application itself listed that the tree has poor structure or unbalanced canopy, that the tree is growing in close proximity to structures and causing damage or will do so in the near future, that there were recent limb failures, and that trees had been previously topped, increasing the risk of limb failures. So when we start looking at them, again, general statement, trees in general are both in fair to good condition. The foliage size, shoot elongation, all within expected range. This spring, we are seeing some minor chlorosis in some of the leaves, which is basically a yellowing of those leaves. Not sure if that's simply kind of the season or if there is potentially something going on with the tree, but it wasn't too extensive and it wasn't something that raised our concern in terms of current condition, I will say. As far as tree number 1 goes, again, that was our leftmost tree or westernmost tree. We again generally felt that it was in fair condition. It had experienced a large limb failure. You can see in that left-hand photograph, it's a little bit small. Yeah, I can't get it too much larger for you here currently, sorry, but I'm gonna say it was about a 12-inch limb that had snapped off of that lower left side and fell down. Our understanding is it actually struck that rental unit to the side of it and caused some damage, but that has all been subsequently dealt with or addressed and fixed. You look at the photograph on the right-hand side, that's kind of what we're looking at is probably the likely cause of prior limb failures, in that you can see the canopy branches. Again, this is one of those, you change perspective a little bit on those trees. You can see that some of that canopy is very elongated and extended out. That whenever we get any type of tree, we've talked about it multiple times with cedars and redwoods and otherwise, but red ironbarks are known for their limb failures when they're not, I'll say, end weight reduced or structurally pruned to keep them somewhat compact. And so our belief, again, is that that top left is kind of a representative example of what that other lower left branch might have looked like before it failed. And so we feel like that can ultimately be addressed by some corrective pruning. You can kind of see on that left-hand picture again, overall structure, there's not too many problems. We did see where it's been headed. It looks like those heading cuts probably took place, I'm gonna say at least 3 to 5 years ago, maybe even longer. Because some of the branches that have resprouted, it's, as an arborist experienced in it, I can tell that it was headed at one point. But ultimately it's fairly uniform in how they come up. There's definitely a downsizing in the diameter of the branch to a smaller branch. But again, it's something that we felt if we were to reduce some of those back down, they become more manageable. So that's where we were with tree number 1. Tree number 3, this one, it's a lot tougher to get a photograph. I did put a couple of red arrows on the left-hand side there where it kind of points to where we believe the tree was headed previously. But as you can see in some of those branches that extend up perhaps, they're still relatively small. I'm gonna say less than 6 inches or so in diameter. So it's not something that we would say is likely to fail today, this week, next year. It could be managed if it's brought down and perhaps even never fail because they're starting to get to that point where they're forming enough reaction wood, et cetera, that they're gonna have a little bit better attachments. The picture on the right, this was a mistake that I made in the memo. I referenced the conch as being on tree number 2 in the memo. The conch is actually on tree number 3. So I wanted to correct that today. In that there is a fungal conch on that connection between those 2 lower left branches. I pointed to with an arrow, it's kind of a gray color now. When we originally viewed it in the spring, brilliant yellow orange color. Ultimately, it's indicative of some decay that is occurring inside of that tree. But when we did a sounding with a mallet or otherwise, we really didn't find extensive decay. We can typically, using a sounding hammer of wood or rubber, you can get that hollow sound when you start to see extensive decay or otherwise. And so we really didn't see extensive decay on this one. So we really felt like that junction was still sound enough that it could support the remaining branches that go up to form the canopy in this case. And so again, overall findings on this one, health and structure is at least fair to good. There's no evidence of large limb failure or any other nuisance damage or interference issues that can't be addressed through corrective pruning. And then again, did not have anything in terms of constructing improvements. There was no tree structural issues that we felt provided anything. And ultimately, they do provide significant screening of that multi-story residence for people driving on Middlefield Road. And then beyond that, didn't feel like it should be removed due to good forestry practice. That was the reason we identified that tree in the middle was more of a good forestry. It had some structure issues. There was overcrowding. We felt like by taking that middle tree, we preserved the majority of the screening, et cetera. And so it made sense to keep the two outside trees.
Just a quick question about this slide. Did you mean tree 1 and 3?
Yes, I apologize. That was a
Okay.
mistake on my part.
Oh, I was starting to wonder if
I have a point of clarification. There are two appellants for this appeal, I
Correct.
believe. Neither of which I believe are the property owner. Is that correct?
I wouldn't speak to ownership, but they are definitely
Okay.
residents.
Okay, thank you. So there are two appellants that each would have 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, the HOA was the applicant and
Oh,
then
I
we
see.
had two
Thank you.
residents that were appellants.
Look at attachment 5. It's got that information.
So, appellant number 1, who would like to speak first? Thank you.
And I have some pictures.
Is that your screen or? Oh, okay. Screensaver.
Two separate. Actually, oh, here. Well, you probably. There's one. Yeah, they're two separate letters. They're two separate letters, but they put them together. Yeah. Yeah.
My computer does that too.
I've got a contingency. I don't know what's going on.
It might.
I got some drive. It's not PowerPoint, it's actually. What's the? Not really. No. What you can do is this here. Is
So I'll just control it and just say slide.
yeah. Sorry. see where it says, tree stuff. Should be, give it that.
This one.
Yeah, that's right. It's gonna be fun.
Thanks for bearing with us. One more second.
Okay. Start there. Yes, to your question about home ownership, my name is Joe Mulcahy. I'm actually the owner of number 16. I'm accompanied here by my neighbor, which is Robert, right? He's also an owner, right? So what I'd like to show is onto the next slide. Everyone kind of knows where the location is, so if you could move to the next. Okay, so we have the three trees here together, right? I'm in the unit here, the lower unit, right, the most left corner. Okay. And what I'd like to say is, you know, these trees are very close to my property and they're close to Robert's as well. And on July 3rd, next slide, please. We had, what do we call it? Severe incident where a limb did fall. So I think I have a picture coming up here.
There's a delay, sorry. I'm pausing your time.
It's okay. There it goes. Yeah, well, that just shows how close it is. So next slide, please. Yeah, well, let's see. We've seen these before, right? Next one. This is the size of the limb. You can see it in proportion to the stairs. It's more than 12 inches. I can assure you, right? It was quite a hefty limb because it fell while I was in my living room, right? You can see the size of the limb that fell. It penetrated right through the wall. Had it come a little bit closer, it would have come through my windows, right? Coincidentally, I was actually sitting there, so I know what it sounds like when these limbs fall. It is like a train, it just collapses, right? This is not my first experience with eucalyptus tree limbs. I lived in Australia for a number of years. It's a common occurrence, right? Particularly during hot weather. So it happens that the day this happened, July 3rd, was probably one of the hottest days we had last year, right? And this came crashing down. Unexpected, out of the blue. Fortunately, there was no one in that walkway, right? And I mean, it probably would have done severe damage to anyone, possibly killed them, I can't say. But I would not like to be in that vicinity, right? Now, this tree, as we know, has subsequently got a clean bill of health. I'm sorry, it fell. I can't say the next limb isn't going to fall, right? Whereas they fall at the middle field on public roadway. I'm extremely nervous, right? I know these trees. I know better to park underneath them. It's an old habit coming from Australia. Don't park under one, but you could come through, we call, right? Don't park underneath, right? You know what's going to happen, right? Eventually you will get caught. So on to the next slide, please. So you can see how close the windows were. Had it come true, right? It was cleaned up in very rapid fashion by the homeowners. I did not incur any cost. The homeowners did, right? So I can't speak how much it cost, but it took till December to get my building fixed, right? Maybe 6 months, 5.5 months or so, right? Okay, it's not a big inconvenience, but I had a huge gaping hole in my wall for a long time. So my point is, I'm not comfortable that these limbs will stay where they're supposed to be, which is on the tree, right? They have been pruned, there's evidence, we speak to it here in this meeting, they have been pruned previously. And I think there's in the input from our complexes, I can't remember the name now, the company that actually does our maintenance on trees, I think they've cited in the handout, they've, whatever with notification, you've copied their comments, right? And it seems to be contrary to what was found. So I see this as being a kind of unacceptable risk, right? Either to the pedestrians who are walking in the walkway of the complex, or to the people that are actually on Middlefield Road, right? I think fortunately it decided to fall in my place, because if it had fallen out onto the public thoroughfare, I think it would have at least caused an accident, right? I mean, I think if it choice of 3 limbs, it could have fallen at that one particular tree, right? So my viewpoint is we have 3 trees, possibly 2 when if you do decide to remove one. I'm still not gonna be comfortable with those trees are safe, right? Based on what I've seen. And as I say, knowing and living in Australia, you know, what they call it limb dropping, right? It's just a byword of gum trees, eucalyptus trees, right? It's just the way they are. So I'm gonna cut it very short, right? As I say, I think the evidence of the pictures speak for themselves, right? But I can't tell you any more than that. 3, I've more patience, right? And I'm particularly nervous. And if I do want to quote something, I can go to your own regulation, which states section 32, 35. Oh, we got the right one now. The condition of the tree with respect to age of the tree relative to the lifespan of the particular species, disease, infestation, general health, damage, public nuisance, could be danger of falling, right? Proximity to existing. I don't think the possibility of another limb dropping has been excluded, or can be excluded. So therefore, I'm not comfortable around those trees. And I don't think anyone in the vicinity of those trees should be happy to be around those trees. I saw Miss Bright, you were having a good look at them yesterday, and I could see you were going. Yeah, I could see the look in your face. I do appreciate it. You came and looked, right? But how would you like to be living underneath those trees? Not a comfortable feeling. You know, they do it, and this is not the first time it's happened. I've lived there for over 20 years, and I'm not there that often. I travel a lot, and I remember one instance where another limb had collapsed. I think the gentleman here, Dave from the homeowners, Doug, also from the homeowners, I think he would say it's not the first time that those limbs have dropped, right? And they have been pruned. We've done whatever you told them. It's still happening. So I will leave it at that. I think the pictures speak for themselves. I have no further comment, right? Other than these trees scare the hell out of me now, right?
Thank you, Mr. McKay. You'll have an opportunity to add additional comment after some.
I'd be happy to do so, but I just say, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And so.
And is it Mr. Klein? Is that the second? Thank you.
Can't leave any.
Members, please. Podium and perhaps introduce yourself.
Good evening. I've been a resident at Willow Park over 40 years, and I've seen lots of issues with the trees. Some have fallen, branches have fallen onto the street. Multiple cords are buildings. So it has a long history of limb dropping. The trees were topped at one point, and I think it was closer to at least 20 years ago when they were topped, at least. And I thought that was a really bad idea, did that. But anyway, I learned something interesting about the trees. With the most recent limb drop that we saw pictures of, the one in Walkway, we were very fortunate. It was a curved branch, and it fell precisely on a curved walkway. It was a very long thing. And you know, I walked it, and it took about 9 seconds to walk from one end of where the branch was to the other. So, and if you figure out walking time, it presented a lot of danger. I mean, somebody may not have been there, there was no one, but there would have been no escape from it. The thing that I found is that particular limb that dropped recently, I noticed just maybe a week or so before, there was a big puddle of sap, and it's a very volatile sap. So it drips down wet and it dries very quickly. It's all the volatiles which make those trees so dangerous in fires, because they're just like flare guns. I noticed that. I go, huh. Go up and I didn't think anything of it. Just a short while later, we had that limb drop of the limb from which the sap dropped. More recently, a limb, very large limb that is over my building, which is a lot larger and longer. It left a puddle considerably larger, and it dried and becomes crispy, and it's water soluble after that, so it disappears. So I predict that as soon as high temperatures come, that limb that dropped its load there is going to come down. And I don't know when temperatures are going to start getting up in the 90s for a period of time, but I really worry about that. I know over the years, limbs have fallen on parked cars that are parked along Millfield. It's just habitual for these trees. And so if we go to pruning, what do we do about that? Obviously, compromise really large branch, because it's already indicated the tree is in distress and it's gonna let it go. So how do we deal with that? Trim it back and hope it heals? I don't know what the trees do. But anyway, I'm concerned for safety. You know, property damage, it doesn't come out of my pocket, but it hurts somebody. So that's pretty much all I have to say, and I hope that in my opinion, tree number 3 offers the greatest danger. More danger than one that just lost a limb. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fine. We'll now have the opportunity for commission to ask questions of any of the speakers. Start on this side. Sure.
So, I mean, I actually had this question before you brought it up. You know, one of the appellants mentioned a red sticky sap emanating from the trees. So my question is, you know, did you notice that in your inspection? And whether you did or you didn't, do you know what it could be and whether it's a sign that the trees are in poor health or infected in some ways? And if yes, can that be treated?
Sure, and so it can be from a couple different sources ultimately with these. There is a likelihood where he talked about that prior limb failure occurring and that sap dripping right below it. It would not be uncommon that when a limb splits, if it rolls or cracks or otherwise splits without falling, you will get sap flow that will flow into that area and it could absolutely drip to the ground. The other kind of opportunity, more, I'll say getting to that time of year, is that when the eucalyptus flower, the flowers themselves actually produce similar sap. It's what the hummingbirds feed off of and so forth. It's kind of a nectar that comes out of those flowers, but it hits the ground, it hardens, it does all the same things that it would out of a split or a crack. And so, yes, we absolutely saw that on some of the sidewalk, et cetera. But there really isn't anything that I'll say is a big concern to us off of that without identifying one particular, like he talked about with the prior limb fair, there was a big puddle. We did not see anything like that when we were there. That's all that I can say. So nothing rose to the level where we're going, this is excessive. This is out of the norm. What is the reason for this at this time? That's all the way I can answer that one for you.
Yes,
Mr. Wright?
I know. I have some questions. Is it appropriate also to talk to the?
Yes.
Okay, so I did indeed spend a lot of time and walked around and looked at the trees, stood under them. So for both the applicants and for staff, I noticed you have a lovely complex. There's just lots and lots of trees. They all look really well maintained. Nothing seems to overhang the houses. It looks loved and cared for, except for the eucalyptuses. They really overhang the houses, which I didn't see. I didn't see your whole complex, but I saw quite a bit of it. The roofs were all clear except for the eucalyptuses. Is there something about how you have been maintaining them that has caused this, or maybe staff can talk to, have you noticed that? I was really surprised by that.
I really can't speak to how the trees are maintained, but we have the president of the HO here, David.
Yes, this year I'm the president of the association, and I've been a director for 40 years. Why, I don't know, but anyway. Typically, each summer, we invite 2 or more arborist companies to come and look at all our trees and give their recommendations for what trimming or other care might be taken with highest priority to medium priority and things like that. If they don't comment on something, would be pretty unusual for someone who's not an arborist to go and see somebody say, hey, this is a problem, latent problem, with a high likelihood of causing greater problems. And that being the case, we might add something to it. When they do the tree inspection, it's sort of a mind numbing kind of a thing, because there are hundreds of trees that they would have to look at. And so it's inevitable things get missed. So without going through inspecting each many pages of spreadsheets about recommendations, it's kind of hard to say what this person mean or that person mean, and how they're using Google and satellite views to try to figure out which tree they're talking about is just very difficult. The point is, there are oversights. I'm not sure how an arborist can say with any kind of surety that a limb will or will not be stable. And I suspect there isn't a lot of structural research into that sort of thing. And, that creates just another problem. As I walk the property, I frequently find not large limbs, but small branches of eucalyptus that have snapped off. And I would have thought that they would be less likely to, because there's not a big moment of inertia while they're bending. So there's a whole lot of things that may not be in the arborist's report, certainly wouldn't be if you're talking about something, let's say a ½ inch or ¼ inch in diameter. But, the things failed for whatever reason. And I don't know how you'd go and do these predictions.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Hanson, so when I looked, standing on Middlefield, looking at the 3 trees, mainly looking at 1 and 3, there were large branches hanging over the roof, which I wouldn't want to have a large eucalyptus branch hanging over the roof of my house. And you had said in your report that a certain amount of pruning and bringing them in would mitigate the risk of branches falling. But when I looked at the large branches overhanging the building, if one took it, it's almost like 3 trunks. If one took the one that's overhanging the building, the whole tree, I think, would be really off balance, would look really strange. I couldn't, I'm not an arborist, you know, but just several decades of looking at trees, if I thought, how would I make this look good? I couldn't see how I could cut the branches that hang over the tree, which are really major branches, and leave something that looks attractive. What, and as I was saying, I didn't see other trees overhanging houses in that complex. I just those two eucalyptuses, there's one other large eucalyptus further east, closer to the bridge, that is kind of isolated, so it does what it wants. So how would you go about it?
Correct. So ultimately, we did note the same thing, especially when I was there and looking at those trees. Absolutely, there's a significant amount of overhang for those buildings. I would also agree that the majority of those branches is woody structure. It is not a lot of foliage or otherwise that you could take it back in one fell swoop. So I guess my statement to that is reconstructing a tree takes just as much time as neglecting a tree and creating these other conflicts and these other problems. And so the restructuring of this tree is not something we could do with one pruning attempt. It would have to be done one time, 2 to 3 to 4 years later, do it again, and then another, likely, typically recommended over 2 to 3 cycles of pruning to where you're actually bringing it back as far as you possibly can. That allows the tree to kind of maintain what it has in the interim. You're not further stressing it or creating that unbalanced structure.
So basically, it's a long-term project.
Corrective process, yes.
Okay, thank you. Those were the questions.
Commissioner Silver?
Well, this is another difficult one, isn't it? I'm really glad that that second tree, the one in the middle, will be coming out. I think it'll actually make a big difference for the density of the mass up in the air, and I think the trees will ultimately grow better and fill in. That Willow Park complex is just beautiful. There's so many trees. It must be a wonderful place to live. And I can tell that you all do value your trees because you spend a lot of time on it. I'm sort of debating, I like what staff is saying, talking about kind of this reconstructive pruning, focusing on the end weight reduction, which will actually make the branches. It's interesting when like the street trees in front on my block were recently trimmed. And they took some end weight off and then the branches go throwing and they actually, their location changes because they can be more upright. So I don't know whether that would be the case with this tree. This particular species has very pendulous branches that are long, foliage is almost like a weeping willow in a way. And, it would take a specialist with experience to really figure out how to do it. But I do see that there's a lot of kind of like cantilevered weight out on the end of the branches. And so by the end weight reduction, it could even move away from the building. All speculation, of course. But in terms of our heritage tree ordinance.
Were you asking your question?
No.
Okay, because we're in the question part.
But so, do you agree with that analysis
That was a
that
question.
the branches would move?
Yes, she's providing context for the question.
Yes.
Ultimately, yes, absolutely. That anytime you're doing, I'll say corrective pruning or end weight, that is exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to get those branches to lift. It's that tension that ultimately frequently causes them to fail or otherwise. And so anytime you can relieve that tension, you can bring them a little bit more upright. The load bearing capacity is more directed downward than it is outward, where they can bend and twist and everything else.
So often you'll see the branch consolidate.
Correct.
More vertical.
Yes.
Thank
We'll get the comments there. Yeah. I think my fellow commissioners have asked most of the questions. I noticed, maybe you already spoke to this, but a blackened, call it a stain, is that a natural?
That is the same sap that you see on the ground.
So that's sap.
Correct,
It's
yes.
not red, it almost looked.
It
burnt.
turns black as it hardens, and what will frequently happen because there's so much sugars in that sap. What it does is it attracts sooty mold, and so you start to get that blackening because the sooty mold forms on the outside of it.
I think you already answered the questions I would have about suggested mitigation. So with that, we'll turn to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to make statements regarding this heritage appeal?
We have one online.
All
Bruce,
right.
England.
Would that be Bruce England? Mr. England?
It would be Bruce England. Thank you. Bruce England, Wisdom Station Drive, again, member of Green Spaces Mountain View. This one seems a little trickier than the first one, but listening very carefully to what's being said, and I like the observation made by Commissioner Summer in the related question about if you take out the middle tree, which that's what staff is talking about in their report, take out the middle tree, but save the two adjacent to it. That really makes a lot of sense, I think, because then you can see whether those two trees that remain will respond to having less competition for soil and sun and all of that. When I look at the satellite view of the property, it looks to me that, and also the photo that's in the report, it looks like the trees in question are part of a network of trees that go all around the perimeter of the property. And it's important to have that kind of contiguous nature of tree planting. As I said in the first agenda item, that helps support wildlife and pollinators that depend on that foliage being there. If the two trees that remain are going to become healthier, that's going to also increase the health of the tree canopy all around that property. I'm not going to speak for a member of the community who talks about this regularly because he might actually weigh in, but there is a member of the community who speaks very strongly about maintaining tree canopy adjacent to the highways such as Highway 85 because it helps create a buffer between the property there and the highway structures there, which is the case at that property. So I haven't heard that mentioned, but I'm sure that you thought about that. He's brought that up in relation to another property, but it's very close by this one. So from the community perspective, I support the staff recommendation, and I hope that the commissioners will vote accordingly. Sorry. I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. England. Any other public?
Yes, we have April Webster.
April Webster, please address the commission.
Hi, good evening. April Webster. I've lived for 15 years in the Moffett Boulevard neighborhood. And I just love the trees around here. Moffett and Middlefield could be a bit better, but there are a lot of trees in this area, and it's absolutely beautiful living next to Stevens Creek as well. And I grew up with a lot of trees in a small town in Canada, and I think it's really valuable. I've been advocating for green complete streets in the community for quite a few years, and have really seen a lot of people in Mountain View fighting. People don't know what they're wanting to ask for, but they come to meetings. They're at City Council, BPAC, the EPC, CTC meetings, downtown committees, even public outreach sessions for the Moffett Precise Plan, which is close to that area. Everyone was asking for trees and shade and parks and livability and just tired of a lot of cement and hostile environments. And so I think it's really important to preserve as much as we can. They just provide so much value to humans and the environment. Shade, cooling, they help deal with urban heat, island effect, and they're basically just essential. And so I think I support staff's recommendation, and I think I grew up with a lot of trees in my backyard, and I'd help my dad prune them every year. Cedars and a bunch of fruit trees and all of that. And from what I'm reading about the lindens, they're like other trees. You don't just set them and forget them. They require regular maintenance, especially in urban environments. And so it sounds like perhaps that wasn't the case. And, when something gets old, you don't just discard it. There's a lot of value to older trees. They take a long time to establish. I've been doing work to learn how you integrate those in the streets, and the amount of resources that you have to put into the cost, the time, the water, et cetera, to grow a tree to be a mature tree. It just takes a lot. And so if we can preserve those through more thoughtful pruning and be more strategic, we don't need to cut the whole tree down. It sounds like, and taking that time over a few years, it seems like a much better approach to me. I have the same problem in the complex. I actually live just a few complexes down, and I have friends who live in that complex. It's quite beautiful. The developers who built the complex I live in, they put cedars right next to the building, and we have problems too. We've got the roots going underneath the building, but we deal with it because and the HOA pushes to keep those in place because we value the trees and the shade, and it just creates this urban oasis. So like Bruce England, I would love to see the recommendations pushed through.
All
Thank
right,
you so much.
April. Appreciate your comments. We now have 2 minutes each for any additional comments from staff and the appellants. Start with staff. You want to respond to anything?
No, again, I think just generally I would speak to the fact that we absolutely agree eucalyptus, they are one of those trees. We have what's called California Tree Failure Reporting Program, where arborists in the industry will do specific tree failure reports. Eucalyptus is one of those that we get a lot of limb failure reports on. And so we have a profile that fits that, yes, these drop limbs, but ultimately is our belief. I'll just say my prior experience, we had a corporate park where we maintained eucalyptus where they experienced probably 5 to 10 limb failures every single year until we took over management of the project and became more proactive to where we limited it to maybe 1 or 2 failures every couple of years. It just is about taking care of them appropriately, and you can limit the amount of risk that they present. That would be the only thing that I'll add.
Thank you. And do either of the appellants wish to make any further comments? Mr. Klein?
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Mr. Hanson, you're absolutely right about when the trees bloom. They rain little droplets all underneath the whole canopy. But this was, I don't know, like a 18-20 inch puddle of this red stuff. It also, it dries very quickly and becomes crispy. And so if you walk on it, it crackles. And all you have to do is take a hose and just squirt it a little bit and it's gone. So it's highly water soluble. So seeing the spot, it's an ephemeral thing. So my question then is that big spot from the big limb that overhangs the building. It said that if a branch is cracking, for instance, it can show its distress by dripping. And my question is, even if that limb is trimmed back, will that branch heal, or is it forever compromised and a danger?
Sure. So
Oh, and one other quickie thing is,
You can answer. Generally, this comment section isn't to ask staff questions, but why don't you go ahead and answer this?
that's where I was going.
so it's a very significant branch on that side of the tree. And so if that gets lopped off to avoid any possible problems, it may cause pretty bad asymmetry.
Correct. So I would simply say, without seeing the crack itself or seeing what is causing that, I can't speak to any specifics other than to say generally, yes, if you were to go in and do end weight reduction on a limb that is cracked or otherwise, the trees recognize when they are damaged, whether it's from lightning, from wind, whatever it may be. They undergo a physiological change where they start to put down what we call reaction wood. That wood is formed specifically to address what the tree feels is damage or a weakness. Similar to way that these trees were topped previously, and we've started to get that new reactionary wood forming over those new branches that have formed. That same thing is going to happen with a cracked branch if it's allowed to be, I'll say, preserved before it fully fails.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Klein, thank you, Mr. Mulcahy. Do you have?
Yes, I have a quick
got
question.
a
I
minute?
mean, it comes down to acceptable risk. We're talking over a period of time, right? We trim the trees, we do what is necessary, which will take time. How acceptable that we don't have a residual risk? Because we only have one patch where I'm living, right? So I have to use it to get out. So there's constantly traffic on that, right? So yes, we can do somewhat to mitigate the risk, but the risk remains. That's the nature of the tree, right? I mean, is this acceptable or, I mean, I'm asking the wrong question here, right? How they, I don't know, it's not acceptable to me. I don't accept, we don't feel it's acceptable, right? That you have this, I would call it liability hanging over you. It may not be just the overhanging limbs. I don't even know where the limb came from. I wasn't even paying attention, but it could have been one of the others, the one that fell out, could have fallen out. So what I'm trying to say is, do people want to live with that, what I call unacceptable risk, right? I don't. That's where I'm sitting, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mulcahy. So now it's for the commission to discuss and deliberate. Want to kick it off, Joe?
Sure, I'll kick it off. Yeah, so from visiting the site, you know, the three trees are definitely in very close proximity to each other. I do see that often with eucalyptus groves in more open settings. It does feel to me like the removal of number 2 will allow number 1 and number 3 more room to grow. Numbers 1 and 3 appear to be in decent health, though there definitely have been some recent limb failures. Number 1 has a wider canopy spread, 60 feet by my measure. I went back and forth across the Middlefield Road and stuff like that when there was a break in the traffic and tried to measure it out. I think it's more well balanced than number 3. Number 3 seems healthy, but most of the growth is on one side, partly due to pruning cuts and partly just because it's been competing with other trees. It occurred to me that number 3 still may not have sufficient space to fully flourish, even with the removal of number 2. It just seems like it could still be limited by a well-developed eucalyptus number 1 on one side and 2 redwoods on the other side. You know, it also occurred to me that these 3 trees may have been planted at the same time. And so whereas number 1 is relatively flourishing, number 3 is more limited in its growth. And number 3 is actually only 2 inches in circumference beyond the threshold to qualify as a heritage tree. So I acknowledge fully that branches from mature trees fall from time to time. We have, this is not the first time we've heard that and people's concern with that. I mean, it can definitely be scary when that happens, and I think eucalyptus are more susceptible to limb failures, as Mr. Hanson said, than some other trees. But sort of in the past, you know, for us, that potential threat alone isn't sufficient reason to remove a generally healthy tree. The staff's report suggests that corrective pruning could mitigate the likelihood of future limb failures. And we learned a little bit more tonight about that. For me, in this case, you know, per the letter of the code, the removal criteria are not met. So I would be siding with denying the appeal and upholding the staff decision to deny removals of eucalyptus trees, number 1 and number 3. However, I could also support keeping number 1 and removing number 3 if 3 doesn't have a great long-term prognosis due to being edged out for space by tree number 1 and the adjacent 2 redwood trees. Removing number 3 would also seem to give the smaller of the 2 redwood trees, which is the one that's closer to that tree, more space to develop. And I personally, if it was a choice between a redwood or a eucalyptus, would probably choose the redwood. So those are my initial comments, and I look forward to hearing what others. Thank you.
Yes, so were I to choose between a eucalyptus and a redwood, I would choose an oak tree.
We knew that.
Right, cause the redwoods don't have conditions they need here either. So, I want to acknowledge that in my opinion, your complex takes beautiful care of its trees. You have a lot of trees. It feels like a different world walking through your complex. I was thinking Middlefield on one side, Moffett on the other, the freeway not far away, and here are the birds singing. Great job. So I don't think there's anything you should have done that you didn't do, which is why it was such a surprise for me to stand under those eucalyptus trees and see how they overhang the buildings. To me, with eucalyptus trees, that's an unacceptable risk. Yes, branches fall, but these are very recent failures. I would put any amount of work, effort, money into protecting an oak tree, gradually pruning it. But a eucalyptus tree, you gradually prune it and you end up with a eucalyptus tree. It may look better, but it's still a eucalyptus tree, and it's a tree that burns easily. It's a tree that drops branches. I, in this case, would disagree with staff. There was enormous overhang over those buildings in a way that is not appropriate for any tree, not appropriate with eucalyptuses, especially. Our ordinance puts emphasis on cedars and redwoods and oaks. I truly do not think we should embark on a plan of spending many years and effort to protect trees that may or may not bounce back, are risky so close to buildings. And this is an environment that is very full of trees. In space where those 3 trees are currently, 2 other trees would do a beautiful job of quickly closing the gap. But there is a very small gap, and compared to what we have in most of town, this is a wonderful neighborhood. So I could agree to maybe at least taking one of them out and then pruning fairly aggressively what is overhanging the house, because that should not be a situation that we ask to continue. But I would permit those trees to be taken out and replaced with other trees.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
I do feel that the removal of tree 1 would not meet the heritage tree ordinance criteria. I'm kind of on the fence about tree 3. And I'm looking at the part of the ordinance that's talking about good forestry practices, which is number 4. Criteria for removal, no, A4. So we're talking about the number of healthy trees a given parcel of land will support. And replacement of young trees to enhance the overall health of the urban. So I think you could make a case that the removal of tree number 3 would enhance the overall health of the remaining trees. Would enhance the health of tree 1 and it would enhance the health of the other trees that aren't proposed for removal. I think it is being held back by the distance between trees. Would it help tree 1 to be better? Sort of seems like it would, but it would also open up a lot more, those particular units to a lot more noise and activity that's occurring on Middlefield Ave. When you look at other parts, Middlefield, there does seem to be a pretty dense canopy, not just at Willow. When is it called? Not at this particular complex, but other places as well, across the street and such. So you don't have quite the same reaction to the fact that it's the species, it's a eucalyptus, as Commissioner Bryant, but so I would be inclined to consider permitting the removal of tree 3. And I'd like to discuss that more if we fit in a moment.
My inclination is to support the staff recommendation. I fully appreciate the terrifying aspect of what you experienced with that large limb failure. However, I think the only professional tree person here has suggested that over time, corrective action can be taken to mitigate that. So, as I said, I will support the staff recommendation. If we as a commission are going to not accept the staff recommendation, the city has a new process. Allison's going to bring up a template if we're going to create a hybrid resolution. So I'm not sure if you're going down something other than the staff recommendation that will follow a new process. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a template that we can work off. We'll share.
Perfect.
So I thought you were done.
I'm pretty much done. By the way, I agree with your disdain for eucalyptus. I don't like eucalyptus. They are fraught with problems, but I'm responding more to the ordinance than my preferences on trees.
I've protected palm trees, which I hate and despise, so let me ask Mr. Hanson. So my concern is completely about the overhang over the houses. In terms of the process of basically reducing the weight at the ends, how far would you recommend that those overhanging branches should be cut back, like immediately?
Sure. So that really is a tough question to answer because each of them has a different structure. And so to find that point is very difficult because on one branch, it might be just 10% that we're taking off. On another one, it might be as much as 50% or more that we have to take off. So if I were to put any kind of number to it in estimation of how much overhang, I'm gonna say probably 10 to 15 feet currently is what I saw while on site. And I would say as a general rule, at least 1/3 of that, maybe as much as 1/2 of that could be brought back to where as little as maybe 5 or 7 feet is all that's left overhanging on your first attempt.
And then it would take like 2 years before the rest of it. with
2
the
to 3 years
assumption that-
between interval, yeah.
That new branches would grow behind the cut, between the tree.
Potentially, yes. The way that the industry guideline for pruning is that we actually take it to a branch that can resume that new kind of leader or new role as the dominant branch. So it isn't necessarily back further on the branch. It's usually right where we're making the cut, is what I would say.
So that would still be overhanging the house.
So then it would regrow, and then we take whatever regrowth off plus another couple of feet to get it a little bit closer to the edge of the building. That would be the cycle. As I mentioned earlier, typically 3 cycles by the time that you're actually making the significant impact that you're looking for, where you're eliminating most of the overhang.
Can I ask you, I mean, I'm looking at the picture. I mean, if 2 and 3 weren't there, is 1 significantly overhanging as much as those other 2 at this point? Because I mean, 1's branch failure eliminated some of the overhang probably. I mean, it's hard to.
Yeah, I would say that probably a maximum of 25 to 30%. If you were to kind of come from a top-down view, you've got about a quarter of the pie that would be over that actual roof. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but that's about, because it is offset. It's out off of the building enough, and there's a lot of foliage around it otherwise, because that canopy is a little more uniform.
Cause tree 1 is the one that's more aligned with the walkway, so it's in the middle of the 2 buildings.
Yeah.
Do you think it would make sense to take them one by one, just the 2 trees in question, or just deal them all at once?
I would say, I'll look to Director Marchand, but I would look to have a motion that deals with that your preferred recommendation in 1. Are you suggesting we vote on keeping?
Well, we
trees
have
others?
a lot of lack of consensus.
Yeah.
So to me, it would be better to do both at the same time. In that I could accept the fact that if we took out the less significant one, it makes sense to then focus on the more significant one, which will require a lot of work. And so taking tree number 3 will kind of help tree number 1 and help focus on tree number 1 to make it become a more acceptable tree.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a related, it's,
Okay,
yeah.
I can get with that.
All right, so I'll throw out just a motion to, go ahead.
Could you throw out the concept, the outline of your?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
I'm not gonna refer to staff recommendation. I mean, basically, the concept of my motion would be to deny the appeal in the case of tree number 1. But accept the appeal in the case of tree number 3. And I don't know if it needs more reasoning or anything like that, but the gist of it would be that 1 is the more healthy tree, and that 3 being removed would.
So 1 stays and 2 and 3 go. That's what you're.
Right, yeah, and 2's not even up for
Right.
debate, yeah, again, justification being that 1 is the more healthy tree, and that with 2 and 3 out of the way, 1 would have a better chance. And there would be less stuff overhanging the building, and it would also give the redwood trees more room as well.
So before this gets to an actual motion state, do you support
I
that
could support
concept,
that.
Commissioner Sommer?
Yes, I would support that general concept.
And then I think we've also been asked to get staff legal opinion before we take it to a motion. Or do you want to see the motion first?
Maybe we could finesse the wording to make sure that I've captured it correctly, and then you could say, yes, this is the motion that we want
Do
to
you
make.
mind making that larger on the screen there?
So it's to deny the appeal for tree number 1.
Yeah.
I can state it, she can write it down.
All right.
Are we
Be
gonna
great.
use this or is this a new?
Can you, let's see here.
This is to, that's.
So let's do this. Can you start a new paragraph there? Because we're gonna use this one for the second part of the motion.
This one would be for tree
It's
number
gonna be
3.
one motion. Keeping tree number 1 and keeping tree number 1 and removing tree number 3.
So denying the appeal for 1 and accepting the appeal.
Where's the deny?
Okay,
So-
tree number 3,
We're going to adopt a resolution of the Urban Forestry Board, City of Mountain View, to deny the appeal, uphold staff's decision, and deny the removal of tree number 1 identified in the memorandum dated May 14th, 2025 at 500 West Middlefield. Comma. Because the criteria under MVCC 32.35 with respect to tree number 1 have not been met sufficiently to justify removal.
That's all. Ready to go. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go.
Well, then the second part of that is gonna say, and
further or something like that.
I mean, we can use the language.
I'm not gonna jump in. I'm gonna let you guys
Okay.
craft it. and then
with respect to tree number.
We get too many cooks.
Aspects of what he suggests. It necessarily working
Adopt a further resolution
homeowner association.
to reject
Grant the appeal.
yeah, okay, grant,
Approve the,
well, let's see what we're gonna say first. I was gonna go with the. Okay, yeah, grant the appeal.
Allison, you but.
So do you want to just say and then this and then? Right? Yeah, it could just be unapproved. Or tree number.
And overturn staff's recommendation with respect to tree number 3. Identified in the memorandum dated May 14th, 2025. At because
Oh.
you want all 3. You want all 3 trees.
No, I'm just saying, you submitted this application.
Okay, so now You have to choose.
So for me, I mean, I think for number three, condition number one is relevant.
Condition number
And
four.
And condition number four is relevant. And it's not all aspects of those, but it's parts.
But I don't know enough about trees.
Definitely could eliminate number two and maybe an aspect of number three.
The one in four covers the.
Yeah, because four talks about room for other trees and stuff.
We have too many trees. Yeah, can you put this all together when you're? No, when you remove what we are, so I can read not respond all together. Thanks. No, I didn't do anything. You want me to talk to Julie tomorrow? Not Julia. You want me to just so tomorrow?
You could do that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll call her tomorrow. Can we say, let's say removal of tree number one at 500 West Middlefield Road, let's move the 500, the address, right? After tree number one.
So would we be adopting the originally proposed resolution? No. No, okay.
The original
Yeah,
resolution.
let's just, you guys keep going, you're on a good roll.
Well, I wanted
He's
to
so supportive.
note that had the same problem with the 3225. I think that's not the correct reference.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I want to look at that tree.
Oh,
You'll find it on the.
Okay.
We already went ahead and went.
Yeah.
I think that's the one she was talking about.
no.
Okay, and then as far as replanting new trees and stuff like that, you guys will deal with that, however.
Yeah, correct.
So do we have consensus on the legality of the motion that Mr. is about to make?
Well, we're gonna deal with this, right? First, we're gonna clean this up, okay. To justify removal, I think semicolon,
Sorry.
First or second?
Very
after,
last.
at the very last, it's sufficiently to justify removal.
Oh, it's
So the end of the first paragraph.
Semicolon. And that's lowercase and approve the appeal, overturn staff's recommendation. Back to tree number 3. Because criteria under has been met specifically.
Yeah, I would only change that they're not adopting a resolution, that they would make a motion to deny the appeal. Because the resolution isn't, the resolution that we have attached is for
I
both.
think we can assume.
So I would just make it, no, it would say a motion to deny. So basically that whole, after resolution of the Urban Forestry Board and City Map City latest, that would be. Yeah, make a motion to,
To say to allow for.
Oh, I think it's just.
yeah, there we go.
Overturn staff's.
Yeah.
We must have shit up.
Want that in there, because we do in the first. I was just saying, that we don't say to allow for, you have the second paragraph. You need to state that. We're saying that
Okay,
we-
to allow, yeah, with respect, an overturned staff's recommendation of action.
so
To
it's
allow
To allow
removal.
removal of
Tree number 3.
Yeah.
You could put that after the date, after May 14th, 2020. To allow removal of the tree.
I would say, I would put it, say overturn staff's recommendation and allow for
Okay.
removal
Yeah.
of tree number 3.
And get rid of with respect. As identified. in the
Yeah, as
memorandum.
identified. Stuff in this one. Alright. There you go.
Okay.
It's a solid motion.
So, Joe, do you have a motion?
That's it. That's it. I mean,
Did you read
you
your
don't even
motion?
want me to read it?
No,
Yes.
I don't think you
Make
need to
a
read it
motion,
out loud.
okay.
If you're making this motion,
Yeah,
I
I-
have it and I will.
I concur with that motion.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and this motion is approved by legal. Which was the intent of the involvement, so maybe we have a vote. Now, please.
Commissioner Bryant?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mitchner,
Yes.
and Chair Davis.
Yes, with reservations, but yes. All right. So, thank you. Thank you, appellants. Sorry for the lengthy wordsmithing, but we've learned that we make things complicated, and that was the quickest path to a simple resolution. So thank you, Mr. Wogus, for helping us with that. We will now turn to item number 5.3, which is a heritage tree appeal for 5 Forest Glen. Mr. Hanson.
All right, again, thank you, commissioners. Here to discuss the potential tree removal of one liquid amber at 5 Forest Glen Street. Liquid amber itself is approximately 22 inches in diameter, is of fair health and fair structure. The applicant listed the following reasons for removal: that the tree is interfering with utility services, either gas, power, sewer, or water. And property owner also submitted an arborist report that stated the tree has caused extensive damage to the road, the irrigation, and the walkway and the street. It has poor form and is growing near high target traffic area, which put everyone who uses the street at risk. No mitigation will counteract root growth of the tree nor eliminate the hazard the tree presents is a danger of falling. When we look at the tree itself, photograph on the left, absolutely recognize that this is another situation where the tree has been raised to provide clearance from the building as well as the roof, so it has less than ideal live crown ratio. So ultimately, we would have liked to have had some of that foliage preserved on the street side of the tree. But we don't feel, again, that it creates any significant risk or increased potential for limb failure as a result currently. As far as the sidewalk, driveway, et cetera, we absolutely noted sidewalk damage for the pathway that leads from the roadway to their front door there. You can see to some extent it's kind of cantilevered to the right because the tree roots have lifted that walkway. But as far as the curb and the roadway, et cetera, far less significant. Can't say whether the cracking in that asphalt is a direct result of roots or not. And so ultimately, we just didn't feel, given that condition, that the roadway damage or otherwise was a big issue. Subsequent to our initial decision to deny removal, the property owners have actually hired a contractor to come out and do some excavations. The primary issue that they've identified with us is that there's approximately a 2-inch water line that runs directly underneath that tree that has become damaged. It is actually leaking water.
Irrigation line or a
Mainline irrigation line, yes, correct.
So not-
Not main line for the house, main line for the irrigation. So that feeds all the other lateral lines. That ultimately that line has become cracked. They did some preliminary excavations to kind of expose where that is, but ultimately they would need to do some additional excavations to get full access and make the repairs. On top of the irrigation line damage, the situation is that the red arrow here is pointing to an approximately 10-inch root that goes directly against the side of the building. We weren't able to determine if it actually goes underneath or if it turns and goes underground. But ultimately they did not report and we did not identify any significant lifting damage displacement where windows don't open, you know, anything else, say structurally, at least at this time. So we felt like that could be managed either through leaving it in place for now, or depending on what other roots need to be cut for that irrigation repair, that one could potentially be saved, create that stability that the tree will need while it recovers from the other excavations for the root pruning, or for the irrigation repair. And so ultimately, similar to the other findings, you know, we felt that ultimately, in terms of criteria number one, the majority of this could be done through corrective root pruning or canopy pruning to rebalance the canopy. We did not find that it was necessary in order to construct improvements because there were none proposed. The overall structure of the canopy is fair and can be managed effectively, and that it did not need to be removed in alignment with good forestry practices. So we denied the removal of this tree.
Great, thank you. Now we have 10 minutes for the appellant.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Selena Gillette. I represent the management company representing the owner for Forest Glen Apartments. So I did want to mention that with regard to the actual complaint that we put in, it was regarding the main irrigation line. However, I would like to also go back further on this particular unit 5. And the previous repairs that we've done that are specific to this tree and the tree roots. So back in November, we actually had a leak underneath the building and also on the left side of Unit 5's door. This was a not only a sewer line, a main sewer line, but also a main domestic line leak. So I have the invoice here where we paid almost $13,000 to repair both of those lines. Back further than that, last June, and additionally, I have some photos to show what the lines actually look like and the roots that have grown within those lines. So this has since been repaired, but this is just one example of how the root system has been affecting the plumbing in this area. Yes. Additionally, back further, we had a repair actually to Unit 5's door. The door was, you had mentioned that you didn't think there was any or hadn't seen anything structurally happening with the building, but we did actually have to do a repair on Unit 5's door. The door frame had actually, the structure had shifted and you saw that the walkway to the doorway is also lifting. So that entire sort of walkway up to the door and the door frame had actually shifted, causing the door not to close properly. So there were some repairs that had to be done in order to correct that door frame and enable the front door to be closed. So while this is currently the appeal that we put in was for the current issue that we're dealing with, which is the main irrigation line, it just shows that we've had a history of this particular tree and the root system causing extensive damage in this area. If you walk the property, which I'm sure all of you did, there are over 20 lumbar trees lining the street of this community. They're all extremely beautiful, but they're all planted in a very close proximity to each of the buildings. The community was built back in 1978. The current owner purchased it in 2015. And so, yes, when she purchased the property, I'm sure she did see the proximity of the trees to the building. However, we basically have to hydroflush the lines multiple times per year to clean out the root systems that are in the pipes for this community. So it is a constant state of maintenance to, to deal with the trees. And there's actually 2 trees in this particular area in front of Unit 5 in a very, very small space, again, close proximity to the building. So we're only asking for the one specific tree that is right over the, irrigation mainline system. We cannot get to that system unless we were to cut the roots. And so I would ask, you know, what would happen if we were to go and cut the roots and then repair the line? You know, what would happen to the tree? Would it risk the tree's health? That would be a concern that we would have. I appreciate your guys' review of our appeal, and I hope that we'll get approval to remove this one particular tree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions from the commission now? No.
So I'm gonna ask you a question. I don't mean to be contentious or anything. This might be similar to something that happened last month. So the staff report says, you know, they were unable to inspect or determine the quantity or size of roots which may be growing under the concrete, causing the lifting. Therefore, staff was unable to determine if root removal and repair of the driveway, I assume that means pathway, will have significant impact on the health or stability of the tree. But then later in assessing the criteria for removal, the report says there is no evidence of large limb failure or any other nuisance damage or interference issues that cannot be addressed through corrective root pruning or canopy pruning. So it feels like, you know, if one of the reasons for denial is availability of mitigations, and yet the report also states that there's uncertainty whether those mitigations will impact the health or stability of the tree, does seem to be a little bit in conflict. And, you know, and I don't know, again, I think this might have happened last month on one of our trees too. And, you know, I don't know the answer. You know, should the application process or the city's review process, you know, mandate a bit of digging so that there are fewer unknowns? I don't know if you can just comment on all that.
Right, and so ultimately, we make an assumption. If we are not able to identify roots and how many are going to be cut, we make the assumption that we are likely to be able to manage it. That's just to address kind of that conflict that you're talking about. Since we don't have data, we're assuming that it can be addressed. We need to have something above and beyond that. In terms of kind of affecting this tree long-term, you know, there weren't excavations done originally. That goes back to kind of what I mentioned, that we frequently, when we get these applications, we will reach out to the property owners and start to kind of explain what's going on. Unfortunately, through no fault of the property managers, owners, or otherwise, it's often difficult to get a hold of the particular people and get all the pieces of information that we need. The sewer repairs that she's talking about here, this is the first I'm seeing of those. I haven't seen those before. I haven't seen anything about the door damage that was done previously. And so it's a challenge for us. And ultimately, we've talked about this more, I think, more than just last month. But ultimately, there comes a point where we have to kind of draw these to a conclusion. We can't continue to go back and ask questions and not receive information, or otherwise that's going to change our initial judgment. And so, you know, again, understanding where I'm going with some of these other new causes or otherwise, we might have made a different decision, I'll say.
I guess maybe, you know, we got a lot of new information just now. I mean, which is a bummer. It wasn't included in the original. You know, I guess a legal question would be, you know, to the extent that this might be relevant information and it wasn't included in any of the original materials, what either the, you know, the application or the appeal, can that be the basis of a decision? I mean, I guess we could base the decision.
Can I tack on to his question? You can answer these both at once. So I think the ordinance says appellant can't reprocess an appeal for 2 years. This is a situation where we're getting new information that perhaps staff would have responded to differently. Can we send it back and request that they resubmit
the appeal?
Well, I would say if the appellant has not met their burden or submitted late evidence here for you to be unable to make a decision to determine that the appellants carried their burden and you deny the appeal, I think under 3231D, which is the section you're talking about, if there was a material change in circumstances, they could come back in the 2-year period to Community Services Director and in writing show that there has been a material change in circumstances, in which case you can re-examine within that 2-year period that is supposed to be with prejudice.
So we could also specify without prejudice that we're denying the appeal, couldn't we, in our motion?
According to 3231D, the denial of a permit shall be with prejudice.
Okay.
But the
alright.
director has the prerogative
Yeah,
to
okay, yeah.
circumvent the 2-year timeframe.
Okay. Sorry, I mean, continuing here, just thank you. And I think that clause was what we ended up, wasn't for this same reason, but for the reason that I mentioned where you couldn't see enough. I think that came up last month at one of these, that if we can see more someday and the conditions change, that would qualify, and I think that was put into one of our decisions last month. Just a question. I mean, there are a number of trees on other units.
Yes.
I'll list the
They-
units later, but I mean, similar problem or different, I mean, because those, I see lifting in some of those, because they also have.
It just depends on where the main lines sit on the property. So not all of them are, it just depends on their proximity to the main sewer line and the domestic lines.
No, I get that, but have you actually, I mean, like in this case, you know of something that happened, they had to redo the door and stuff like that, has that happened
Yes,
in other?
yes.
in other-
So we actually had we actually had one other tree already removed at unit 12 because it affected the mainline pipes as well as it was lifting the entire garage.
Okay, so that would have been one that, I guess either you removed it, but it's by yourselves or the city approved it or something like that. So-
Yeah, I before my time is all I can say in that regard. I did not process that one.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Any questions? Any questions?
I had a question for the applicant. Have you thought about whether you would replant in this location?
So the tree that we replanted for the first one was a crepe myrtle. Just because the roots are less invasive. We do want trees there. The community, we feel like it helps to add to the community. So it's just about finding the right tree that can live in close proximity to the buildings. And we have other spaces within the community that we can also replant trees as well.
Thanks, that was my question.
Okay, we'll turn to public comment now. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Yes, we have Mr. England.
Mr. England?
Hello all again, Bruce England again. On Wisdom Station Drive, member of Green Spaces Mountain View. This is also an interesting item, different from agenda item 1 and 2. And it sounds to me like the discussion about the nature of the problem and the potential mitigations and the things that have been considered are reasonable and sound. I mean, I'm always happy to hear that when it isn't just I don't know, people being focused on what impacts their own lives and thinking more broadly about the community, and in this case, the local community of the people who live on that, I assume it's a private road. And So I live in an HOA myself in Wisman Station, and I've been here for over 25 years at this point. And one thing that I notice and my neighbors notice is that the trees that were planted in the first place were planted by the developer. And it seems like they didn't give a lot of thought to what was going to happen with those trees 10, 15, 20 years out. And now we, the existing homeowners and the current management company, are having to contend with that. You know, what makes the community look lovely when they're trying to sell units is very different from what life is like for people who live there. And so planting those trees in that location closer to the buildings may have looked nice when they were smaller trees and they were trying to, you know, sell and lease the units. Not sure what the arrangements are, but when they were trying to go through that, they may not have been thinking this far out. The idea that they are thinking already about replacement trees and that the community there, people living along that street, value that, and that they're not going to just, you know, pull trees out. And in any case, they're only talking about the one tree, even though you could make the same argument about all the trees along that street, which I hope they won't, but that's a possibility. So they're making the claim on the one tree. So it's very focused, and they're already thinking about trees will go in there, not because the city is requiring it only, but because the people who live there actually want that. And so it makes me feel pretty good about the way that they're approaching this. As always, I'm tending to want to support staff recommendations because they know best, in my opinion. But I just wanted to make those observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. England. Any other folks online?
No.
Okay. Selena, you have 2 minutes if you want to make any additional comments before the commission deliberates.
Yeah, I don't really have any other comments, just that, you know, I don't see how we could fix this issue, you know, without causing significant risk to the tree itself. And so I guess I'm just at a loss to, you know, I'm just hoping you guys will help us to fix this, and we would like to definitely plant something in its place.
Thank you. So with that, it's to the commission. So we'll want to kick off the discussion.
Well, I sort of have another question, I think, for our legal counsel. If I could. Do we think that the evidence presented to us in this hearing is sufficient to do anything other than the staff recommendation, or do we feel that we want to have written?
I think it's up to you. If you want to rely on the representations that have been made, you can do that. If you feel more confident in relying on documents, reports from experts, it's up to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm probably out of line in answering it, but I'm not prepared to accept stuff being submitted in the meeting. So I will suggest and I'm out of order here. I'm supposed to go last, but I'll suggest we deny the appeal with the caveat that they can immediately resubmit with the information that they have. This would set up a new precedent that I don't want to see the commission face.
So I'll agree with the chair. I think basically what we're saying, staff didn't have all the information. And staff needs to do a rethink working with the appellant. And so if we accept staff's decision, the applicant can reapply and basically give staff all the information they need, and this may not need to come back to the commission at all.
Yes, I think, I mean, I certainly appreciate the magnitude of what they're facing. I also have a liquid amber tree and it cracked my sewer pipe and various things like that. So I think if we had, I appreciate the photos. They're a little hard to understand. I think if we had had kind of a full documentation of that situation. As well as the door, we might have been able to take care of it tonight because we would have had some documentation.
Probably wouldn't come to us tonight.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, also the other thing that's happened between the original, I mean, there's been a bunch of digging. So there's a lot more known. I mean, that looks like a mess. I mean, so, I mean, you know, I have to reroute pipes and stuff like that. And I could see that you know, just without all the other information, you know, a drip system there, you know, there's not a whole lot of growth in the front yard. A drip system would probably adequately handle it. And then, you know, I was prepared to say that if the digging happens and it, you know, if you went through the process to fix the pathway and you did some digging and saw the roots and it was too extensive to deal with, and that might be a change of circumstances to allow, so anyway, so now there's even more change of circumstances potentially.
I think the new information being the extent of the damage that's being caused by the tree, it's to the major structure. And the sewer and water main line.
So this isn't the first time that sewer pipe problems have arisen while the PRC was discussing heritage tree issues. And staff may go one direction or the other, but staff will have looked at that issue and made a decision. So it's like, I thought maybe we can just adjourn the meeting and continue it for some other time, but this seems like a clean way to go about it. With the information we have at this, with the written information that we received, I'm happy to accept staff's recommendation, and with the additional information that is out there, bring it to staff, and we won't see her again perhaps.
Or we might, depending on.
We'd like to, just not here.
Yes. Right, so I will make a motion to adopt a resolution of the Urban Forestry Board of the City of Mountain View to deny the appeal, uphold staff's decision, and deny the removal of one heritage tree at 5 Forest Glen Street, to be read in title only, further reading waived, attachment 1 to the memorandum.
And then a potential amendment would be to add the note about the 3525 being changed to 3235 as we did in the first one.
And I guess we wouldn't have to put in the resolution. My thinking, so you know, presuming this information is accurate and is assessed by staff, my feeling is that staff would come up with a different conclusion than they did, but mine is purely a process concern. And that the applicant should be allowed to rather immediately resubmit. We need to put that into the resolution or just not.
I'd say no, it's in the code.
Okay, so then we've been asked to have you comment on our motion before it's seconded. Were you okay with what you heard?
Yeah, yes, I was,
Do we have a second?
with the language you tacked on.
Right, as in the first one, I
I
think,
use the same language. as the
same
first one,
language
yeah.
as the
So
first
to
matter.
the resolution and attachment 1 should be updated to reflect city code 32.35 in paragraph, well, in paragraphs 1 and 3.
1 and 3, yeah.
Okay, we're sure it's 1 and 3 also. This one too, yes.
You're sure?
Okay, so we have a motion and a motion that is acceptable to the city staff or the council. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Allison, can we vote on that?
You may. Okay, we have Commissioner Bryant.
Yes.
Commissioner Summer.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mitchner.
Yes,
And Chair Davis.
Yes.
and I would just add, I mean, just beyond this, for me, this isn't a blanket for all trees on that street. As you mentioned, there are unique circumstances with each one and so
Understand.
that's just me.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and participating in the process.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, I think that concludes our agenda items other than staff announcements.
You can give these folks a moment if they wanna back up. Want to thank them for their time being here tonight.
I want my counsel around.
I
Now that I know we've got.
I think we moved in the right direction with the procedures for this, and I appreciate
Yep,
your
yeah.
thought to it.
And hopefully you saw some changes in the staff report.
Yeah.
Will you say so on me?
Sorry. The rest of the commissioners. It's goofy, I guess. But again, thank you. Happy to know that there's council representing. Yeah.
So yes, we've met with our legal counsel several times since the last meeting and looking for ways to improve our process. Appreciate you noticing. So.
John, could you by chance move?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
You actually wanna see my face?
you. Plus it puts you in the middle on the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so coming up on the end of the fiscal year, there's a lot going on. Number one, if you are on our email list, you would have seen an email come through regarding a citywide fee study that's being undertaken by the city. So there was a council finance committee meeting on May 8th to review suggested changes to our fees citywide. Within CSD, the main changes that we were looking to make at this moment that were suggested were to CPA, a small increase to our community gardens. Some of our teen fees from what is currently $5 to $10 or $7 to $10. Those are for specific events that are held that are ticketed events. And then also for some of our the tree planting, tree mitigation, and then for our tree appeal process. So the process that the city went through was looking at staff's total time and the cost of each of those staff members involved, of which you see tonight is a lot of staff time for these tree appeals, everything from collecting the fees, processing the fees, going out in the field, multiple staff in the field, preparing staff reports, presentations, being here tonight, and then doing the follow-up after the meeting. So we as staff proposed, you can guess currently it's $50 that we're like 98%, 99% subsidized of the total cost of staff time. And so what we proposed was a 95% subsidy so that we're still trying to keep that fee low. And that was close to $300 as being proposed. We're being asked to try to get to a lower amount of subsidy. And so we'll be recommending a multi-year plan to increase fees to meet that request from the council finance committee.
Guys, just a,
Are you not jumping to the 300 fee? I'm sorry, I didn't.
That will.
Or is that a step
That's
to
the
a
step.
larger?
That's,
600.
so it may be slightly higher even at a starting point and then working our way up over 2 to 3 years.
yeah, so my issue with this is that, you know, I got the email. I clicked on some attachments. I finally found the document that, you know, and it's 30+ pages or something like that. And I guess I would have preferred, and it may not be your decision, that at least the community services part of it would have flowed through this commission, because we sort of have oversight, might not be the right word, but the other part of it is just for transparency for the community. You know, I saw those I saw the tree stuff. I mean, we won't get as many appeals. I thought that maybe that could have been bundled in with our whole tree thing that we're doing right now. But you know, I was also struck by the teen center fees that are going up, and those are a segment of the community where that increase might matter. And I don't see those people clicking on the email and seeing that. They're just gonna suddenly have higher fees. So I just thought from a transparency and process thing, it would have been nice to have had the community service, and you know, it may be the same thing may be true for the other departments that were in there, but it would have been nice to have that more publicly seen.
So let me also chime in here. We're talking here about raising very significantly the cost of the appeals. How about the heritage tree removal fees?
Yes,
The application fee is going up as well.
slightly.
Yeah,
But
and
the
then, and the
replacement-
replacement is going from $750 to $1,750 or something like that.
I think we've landed on 1,200 right now. That'll also be phased.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm just going by what I saw in the,
So currently the application is 116, going up to 169. It's not changing. Removal appeal, currently 50. We recommended 318, and that was at 95% subsidy. So the CFC asked us to come back with a higher price over time. Tree replacement, $750 to $1,785.
So to really agree with Joe, so the PRC is responsible for budgets or for dollar signs, but many of the decisions about prices of classes or hugely increasing the price of an appeal, but not hugely increasing the price of a removal request. Those have ethical value connotations. That it would have been really appropriate to bring to the PRC, I think, to bring to council. I mean, council will still obviously discuss what it means for more vulnerable residents, or what it means for community involvement, and what it means for people trying to be more ecologically sensitive. It would have been good to have brought it to the PRC, because it also makes it more visible, so the community has more time to digest it. And several years ago, Brenda, when we were trying to work on changes to the heritage tree ordinance, we had discussed the relative prices of asking to take out a heritage tree versus asking to making an appeal. And this price structure makes it much easier to ask to take out a heritage tree than to make an appeal, because that $300 is a lot of money. So it's things keep on happening independent of what we're trying to do in terms of trees and our support of trees in the urban forest. That I'm not comfortable with that.
Understood. Just for context, we were not asked to participate in a discussion. We were asked to provide staffing costs associated with, so an application doesn't require as much time as the appeal. You get the city attorneys involved, we got two sitting here, their time is very costly. And so for an appeal, I think we were upwards of $6,000 for an appeal. You know, so there's been some back and forth and they're taking into consideration what we've said, but we also are at the behest of finance, city council, city management. And so our participation has truly been to provide information and to provide some recommendations, but ultimately we aren't the decision makers.
Yes, I mean, that's clear, and you've made it even clearer. Thank you, that was.
Sure.
So let me just finish my thought process here. So this is coming to council with recommendations, which would be an appropriate time possibly for us individually. I don't know if we can make a statement as a commission that's kind of open to discussion, but certainly for us individually to say, oh, by the way, I mean, the price structure is one thing and community effects is another thing.
So the citywide fee study is scheduled to go to council on June 10th.
What I was gonna say is, we're allowed to request items to be agendized to us. We can request that as a group. I don't think that timing's particularly conducive. However, being that it's May 14th, and we aren't probably gonna meet between now and June 10th.
I mean, when did this get initiated? I mean, again, I can quibble about the fees, but I mean, my bigger thing is just that it should have been open to people, and that most people aren't gonna do what I did and peruse through a 30-page document that starts out with all the public works fees and, you know, there's fire and there's police and there's all sorts of other stuff to find. You know, a lot of them don't even know community services, what it is. I mean, it doesn't feel that it gave the public a good, and I mean, it's great that the email went out. It would have been awesome if the email could have, because it seemed like it was a community services department-ish.
So there were multiple that went out. So getting to your point more directly is, if you were a community gardener, the notice that went out to them was stating fee study, including community gardens, and you can find the fee on this page.
Okay, that's good,
I don't remember getting that one.
because you have a plot, right?
Yeah,
And we do too. My wife saw that. And we fully support the increased fee.
Yeah, to me, it's just airtime for things and for people who aren't, you know, gonna be digging through large documents. I mean, it's great if you did that for the community gardens. The teen center would have been great if users of the teen center had gotten that. Did they? Then that's great. That's good. I didn't know.
And then next month, we will be bringing to you an overview of what Bruce England talked about earlier at the beginning of the meeting, is the capital improvement program. So there was a study session last night. Council approved staff's recommendation related to those to move forward, and then we'll do a review of those at our next meeting. You can see those before it gets finalized.
And next month is also when we're doing the strategic plan.
We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Very good.
From the recreation division, some updates. So we have Kidstock starting this Saturday, 10 a.m. Civic Center Plaza. Concerts on the plaza kick off Thursday, June 6th with Vibe Society as the band. We are hosting the first Together in Pride event on June 7th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Civic Center Plaza. You probably saw some information about that around town. And then we had talked about this before in relation to the Rangsdorf Park Aquatic Center grand opening. We have our first recreation swim of the season on Saturday, May 24th. We are making this a free event to the residents. And we're doing a special day with featuring music, some giveaways, and having just basically a pool party and to celebrate the season opening of Recreation Swim. We are coming up on one of the last remaining capital projects in Ringsdorf Park. So if you've been in the park recently, the new building next to the barbecue has been delivered and put in place. They are still working around the site and finalizing the restroom overall, but we're hoping that that becomes available and accessible to the public sometime next month. So moving forward with that. We have. You have been made aware of the Evelyn Park grand opening on May 28th at 4:30. You'll be receiving more information in the next week or so in relation to some of the logistics that we're planning. Make sure that people have parking and able to enjoy that event. What's that?
Did you send something
Yeah,
out
I
on
don't
that?
remember.
No, I don't remember getting it either.
All right, we'll make sure you get that.
May 28th at 4:30.
May 28th, 4:30, correct.
What day of the week?
It's a Wednesday, I think.
Oh, May
26th is Memorial Day.
28th is a Wednesday.
That was my fault. I think I got requested to send it and I didn't send it.
Ah.
Sorry. I'll send
So
it.
I get to send this email to you.
I didn't initially say anything because, you know, I have that issue where I can't see a lot what's in some of those,
Yeah,
because I
no,
don't have
that was me.
Outlook and so I didn't. I
I'll
thought-
forward it tonight or tomorrow.
So. Now you know. All right, so with the Parks and Rec strategic plan, we were scheduled to come to you in June. There's a couple things in the works that I wanted to make you aware of. Number one is staff has been reviewing. We don't have the full plan quite yet, but we've finalized the last chapter that we were reviewing. So we're not quite ready to come in June. On top of that, at the same time that we've been meeting with each of you, we've been meeting with members of the city council and individual briefings and keeping them updated in the plan where we are, where we're heading. And at the last time that we did the level of service briefings, several council members were asking and inquiring whether the Parks and Rec strategic plan can go to council first before it comes to the PRC. They thought that was a way to provide some initial feedback and then be able to give you an opportunity to hear their high level feedback, provide information for you to dive into at a more granular level. And so we have been working with
So a member of council or all the council suggest that?
multiple.
Okay. I might have to contact the council and review the city charter with
Yeah.
them. Because that's not how I see it.
Right.
So at the moment, we are looking to go to city council on October 14th. And then we would be coming back to you in December based on their feedback.
We've never even seen the darn thing.
Understood.
So I will say that I shared my surprise with a number of council members about the fact that we have not seen the vision or the goals. And they shared with me the fact that they hadn't seen anything. So this is where this may be coming from. However, I question the need for a PRC at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know what we're doing.
exactly.
Heritage tree appeals is not lovely and I hate doing it, but we're not doing anything else. I am not a happy commissioner.
Understood.
They can come to our meeting and talk. And share their thoughts. But otherwise, you know, what's the point of even having a park and rec commission? I totally agree.
Because we have not actually particularly worked on this plan. I don't know.
I mean, obviously, we don't get to tell them what to do.
Did they say that
Well,
in individual,
We do.
one-on-ones, or did they do that in a formal meeting?
Individual.
So there's some maybe discontent you might notice. How do you suggest we confront this? Because I think it does have to be addressed. Either we have to be told, no, you guys really aren't. And this city charter needs drastic revision. It currently says we have the power and the duty to act in an advisory capacity to council in all matters pertaining to recreation and parks. And that is far different than being occasionally updated after the fact on things. So there's kind of a real disconnect within the city, let alone our opinions about that. I mean, with the city's own charter. Should we put it on someone's agenda to discuss that, what the roles should be? I mean, if our roles need to be defined, redefine them, and then we can decide whether we want to participate, but I do think some clarity needs to occur around that.
I will share the response received, and I'll be reaching out to each of you individually.
Okay.
And we'll go.
Yeah, I mean, it was already gonna be challenged. I mean, we were already, I think we all envisioned that we were gonna be involved in this
Mhm.
process.
The
every step of
process
the way.
has changed over time.
And
You're
we
right.
were already feeling sort of bereft that we were only gonna get two cracks at it. Really, I mean, we saw little pieces. And now it sounds like we're only gonna get one crack, and it's gonna be biased by, you know, what council thought of it the first time. And will be directed to respond to their comments and. Yeah,
That just
so-
sounds like a rubber stamp to me.
I don't want to berate you. I think it is an issue across multiple advisory bodies, and I knew the city just needs to do a full review of advisory body function. But anyway, you'll reach out and speak with us.
Let me just ask a clarifying question. So for one thing, I'm not blaming you for this. I don't think it was your decision. Is the idea that basically council is going to be presented with the strategic plan, or they're going to do a study session? On
It'll
the
be a study
vision
session.
goals, on the entire, on what we have at this point, which staff hasn't finished looking at either. I think it's an awful process. But I know you've heard us.
I mean, and
There's, and
I've
also,
had,
this is the first time trying to put a plan like this together. And I'm speaking about the process leading up to this. There have been lots of lessons learned, and has it gone exactly the way that staff had anticipated? Not necessarily. And through that process, I think we'll be able to, in the future, be able to do things differently.
So at this point, it's also apropos to ask about the biodiversity and urban forestry plan.
That is still scheduled to come to PRC on August 13th.
But that's just because the council hasn't realized that they want to talk about it before we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's also tough because. I mean, with occasionally council members would. Reach out to me for my opinion on. In this case, it would be the strategic plan, but. First of all, I don't know whether they will, and secondly, I don't have much comment because I haven't seen it, so.
They're very different plans. And there's a lot of policy related to the Parks and Recreation strategic plan that council feels like they need to weigh in on as policymakers. With the biodiversity and urban forest plan, you're the urban forestry board. It really does sit in your house to look at first before it goes to council. It's not a policy driven plan. So not sure if that helps or gives a little bit of context. But there are a lot of things in the Parks and Recreation strategic plan that are gonna be changing and shifting, and those are, again, policy decisions.
But so doesn't the policy board want to hear from the individual that they've appointed to advise them on the policies? I mean, that's the essence of it. If they want to pose questions to us, that feels appropriate.
Or if they want our advice on an issue that we
Yeah, to
have thought
identify
about
the
more
issue.
than they have, because they have a much broader range of issues they need to think about.
Yeah,
I'll be going full circle with each of you.
awesome.
Very good.
So I mean, in terms of, I mean, we added a bunch of extra meetings, right?
So Allison, yeah, so probably sometime next week, depending on how we do move forward, Allison will be setting out updated calendar information.
So what are we doing in June, by the way?
So for the main meeting, we do have, say, 2 tree appeals. Although
Sorry.
we have our annual work plan, we have the canopy annual work plan, and then talking about the budget moving forward for the next fiscal year, as well as review of the CIP information.
So that's so we have a meeting still on the 11th.
Yes.
Two meetings in June.
Just the 11th, but the 11th for sure. We'll get back to you about the 25th.
I mean, the council thing again, I mean, is it set? I mean, given that it's just individual conversations you had, because Brown Act wise, they couldn't have. Come to consensus on that. I mean, is it a done deal, October and December, or I mean, what?
I'll speak to each of you.
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on whether the city manager feels she's gotten a directive or not. I will say that this type of thing happens with park and rec boards all over the place. The county, I don't know, in Santa Clara County, it happens to San Mateo County all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the county level, it's been frustrating, but city, it's been different in the past.
Yes, it has definitely been different. The Parks and Open Space plan that I participated in was completely driven by the PRC with
Right.
check-ins to council. And the work was done here,
Mhm.
commissioners and staff together. It's what I expected when I planned to go back to the PRC. It's truly not what has happened.
Any other staff reports? Any last comments? I'm gonna slam this gavel.
Slam away.
Thank you, people online, for hanging in there. I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. So adjourn.